OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, you're very welcome along. It's Tuesday morning. We've got a very, very busy show for you, a very busy day for you. Ireland are playing the Maoris in about 45 minutes, and we will bring you post-match immediate reaction from Keith Wood. You won't get it on this stream. You'll get it on a new stream, so you have to come back to us at 10 o'clock for that. But I know you're going to stay with us all the way until then anyway. And in the meantime, Owen Sheahan, you're back. Alive and well.
Yes.
How are you?
Alive.
Your voice is a little bit croaky.
Yesterday, I could have shut up, but I actually wouldn't have been able to speak. I was quite astonished.
Out of happiness.
Yes.
Just
like
happiness. Stunned into silence.
Yeah, I was stunned into silence during the second half of Sunday's game, so I don't know how my voice is actually gone. I don't think I actually did push the vocal cords that much, but clearly...
Because you were sat in your seat, collapsed, thinking, this is the worst collapse I've ever seen.
Frozen,
from any team in my life, ever. Do you want to reveal the messages that you were sending to myself and Tommy in the middle of the game?
No, absolutely not. I was just reverse jinxing it.
You were comparing them to Mayo. You were like Mayo and green and gold out there.
Yeah, I did feel... if Kerry lost that game...
It would have been an all-timer.
It would have been, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But in the end, it is an all-timer because Sean O'Shea, Cojones, Co-Jones as whatever it was. Who was that? Was it Motti?
Yeah, Motti and Troy Deeney, whichever you want to go for there. The Co-Jones. That actually did kind of come into my mind, actually, Troy Deeney's comments, you know. I was kind of like a reeling Arsenal fan when Troy Deeney described Arsenal as no Co-Jones. And Sean O'Shea kind of gave Co-Jones to my entire sporting existence on Sunday. And it was remarkable. It was like, just like on that kind of point that you touched on, it would have been one of the all-time collapses. That's going to be a really interesting talking point for the next 2 weeks about how much we read into that. Is that a real concern before the final, or is that just something that you have to go through as you try to get over the mountain that is Dublin? Because, like, is it something like, say if you look at the Great Limerick hurling team at the moment, the last couple of years it looks like they've just swept teams aside. The first year they got over that mountain, it was absolute nerve-shredding stuff. The extra time against Cork, even the final against Galway. And then the couple of years after that, you could tell that they were much better than those teams. The reality is the first year, getting up that hill, there's just so many complicating factors around it all that I wonder, does that mitigate it somewhat? Or actually is this a red flag and Kerry are going to get done in the final?
No, they're not going to get done. They can't get done at this stage. Like that was the bit that they needed to overcome. Like all of those teams, if you think about it, right, you know, listening to the football pod on the way in, James O'Donoghue had made the point last week that they need to sprint over the line. They can't fall over the line. And then they did manage to fall over the line, which is even better. Because if they'd sprinted over the line, we would have been like, oh, that Dublin team, they were finished. It was the end of an era anyway. They weren't really blah, blah, blah. But it turns out that Dublin team are still really good.
Yeah.
And in that second half, they proved their championship mentality right up until the very end when they should have proved it a little bit more. And I'd say they'll be kicking themselves for it. But it means that Kerry have come through the challenge. And so therefore, like, don't be worrying about the final. You can't be talking yourself into worrying about the final.
Oh, well, I mean...
grand.
I don't need to talk myself into worrying about the final whatsoever. It's an All-Ireland final. You can't not be worried about it.
It's an All-Ireland final the way that... Remember Dublin played Tyrone. The first kick
it's
out,
not
game
like
over.
I don't think it's like that at all.
That's what it's going to be. It's what it should be.
I think this Galway team is better than Tyrone of 2018 is. I definitely agree with that point that Kerry needed to sprint over the line. I think I said to somebody the morning of the game that Kerry are probably more likely to win by 10 points to win by 1 point. Because,
and it looked like they were going to at half time.
Yeah, and then when it becomes a case where they're going to have to win this game by a small margin, you actually just don't believe that they are. And you're happy to be so wrong at the end because you've seen it so many times. And even the way the second half had gone. Like what I found really interesting is that the thing we've been saying about the Dubs all year is that their bench just isn't good enough to win an All-Ireland. When Desi makes the changes on 40 minutes, their 40th minute team is better than their starting team, I thought, when you bring Scully and Paddy Small into proceedings. And that's even before the comeback starts. I think that's still like a 5-point gap. That's when I'm like, this thing is still very much in the fire. And Cormac Costello just delivers one of the all-time great goals. Like that will go down as one of those things in a few years where we're like, remember that goal?
Yeah.
Just got like Killian Spillane in the 2019 drawn game where the loser, the team on the losing team just scores one of the great goals in Croke Park, and it is kind of all for nothing in the end, except for giving the neutral unbelievable drama.
Yeah. I mean, extra time is interesting, like to consider what would have happened.
I think Kerry would have won on extra time.
Paddy Andrews said the same thing.
I believe that. Like most people were saying afterwards that if we'd gone into extra time, that Kerry would have got beaten. And I'm just not sure that was the case. I think that if Jack O'Connor gets that team into the dressing room one more time, and just everybody chills out a little bit, I think they would have seen it out.
Is there a possibility that Clifford's fitness, because he's been injured and hasn't been training properly, wasn't enough to get him to the same level in the second half, and so therefore he might have been diminished in extra time?
Yeah, possibly. That's one of the factors, but I still think that, I suppose, all the what's the subs the situation in extra time?
Away you go.
Away you go for like free reign again.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if you'd gone deeper into the squad,
you can just
players back on.
Yeah. So you just read, like, David Moran starts again.
Yeah.
at the start of it, like.
Yeah, like, so I don't know. I think, again, this maybe isn't, that was just a little bit of a hunch, but my entire thought process midway through the second half was just get to extra time at this point, because I was full sure that Dublin were going to win. I was like, just get to extra time and get them back into the dressing room, chill out, stop shooting into the hill, because that seems to be it seems to be something that people are talking about more and more in recent years. It seems to be a thing. Clifford's radar was off in the second half. Diarmuid O'Connor dropping the ball short that was probably the moment my voice box decided that you're done. You're absolutely done. And I think Joe O'Connor had the ball in a shooting position and decided to turn around and pass it backwards as well. That sequence of events, shooting into the hill, was excruciating.
It definitely seemed to be bad for everybody, and so maybe that was the one thing that, like, the windiness of that part of the stadium. Like, the wind has been blustery in recent weeks, where you're sitting. I live right beside Croke Park. You're sitting in the back garden and it's like, I'm going to go for cycle. Can't go for cycle. It's too windy. And then 5 minutes later, totally fine.
Yeah.
Balmy conditions. So maybe that's why Clifford is like shaking his head, going, "No, I mean, I've just done everything I did in the first half, and the ball has gone wide."
But he was getting the distance on it. They were just going wide, and it was into the headwind, which was strange.
But the terrible wides that Dublin kicked in the first half,
yeah,
like
they
the
match
spirit
up.
sapping wides, like it doesn't make any sense.
Like, that is kind of one of the strange quirks of the game as well when you look back on it. It's that Kerry probably came off the pitch at half time thinking they could have been 10 points up. But, like, Kerry took an early, was it 2 or 3 point lead, and I still thought they were the second best team in that first quarter, that Dublin had the better opportunities. They did that thing where they were getting into good scoring zones and they were just missing their opportunities. And then it was just the second quarter where Kerry killed them and just didn't make it count fully on the scoreboard.
Yeah. Joseph Hannon says, nerves of steel from Seána O'Shea, to be honest, under undue pressure from the hill. What? I see a lot of people giving out about, like, oh, there's noise when people are taking frees, or wides are being cheered. It's like, come on, this is like two teams. The prize is the big prize. You're behind the team. But come on, we need an atmosphere. This is not checkers. It matters. People have put thought and time and effort into this. A Clifford wide is the equivalent of a score.
Yeah,
and like that,
yeah, it really is.
You know, and that's
the same from the other side of things. Like, that Niall Scully wide gave massive oxygen to the Kerry fans.
Yeah.
Like, and there was a lot of Kerry fans there on Sunday, and they were doing the exact same thing as the Dubs, cheering when John Small got the black card. Like, I know we like to criticise the Dublin fans, and I've done that quite a lot in the past, but I mean, it's hypocrisy. It's just pure blatant hypocrisy. Like, the Kerry fans do it as well.
Oh, totally, yeah. Dean M says that wouldn't have been an all-time collapse. The first half wides were the big difference. Scully's hit and hope wide in the last 5 minutes was the big difference in the closing stages. No way Kerry wins in extra time. No doubt, though, one of the best kicks ever. Yeah. So what was the prognosis afterwards?
But, like, I think it's just hard to get away from that moment in the aftermath. Like, that was the greatest moment I've ever had as a Kerry fan. It is the greatest moment as a sports fan of my life.
Right.
I don't think there's one that's better. The joy in 2014 after they win the All Ireland is obviously incredible, but there isn't really a singular moment in the 2014 final on that level. Like 2018 when we were in Clonus, we almost all passed out in the terrace in the heat after Clifford scores that last gasp goal. But that's to draw the game, and Kerry don't get out of that group. 2001 obviously with Morris was absolutely insane, and possibly a better effort again, and possibly one of the greatest points I've ever seen scored. But again, Kerry get destroyed in the semi-final, and that does bring you to the point that this moment in isolation is fantastic, but it only truly gets rubber stamped if Kerry win the final. But it doesn't matter. That doesn't change your celebration at the time, because all you can do is react to Kerry getting out of jail, coming what felt like from behind. They weren't behind, but it felt like they were behind, coming from the death to win this thing. And we don't get that in Gaelic games very often. Kerry have won All Irelands by a landslide in the past. All my life it's been killing teams in the final, except for 14, except for 97 and 2000, where I was maybe a little bit too young. But this was just in just one moment wrapped up the happiest you could possibly feel, because it was a walk-off win. We just don't get that at all. And we sometimes forget as well that Kerry's way to beat Dublin is longer than Kerry's wait to win Sam Maguire. Like, they didn't beat Dublin in 2014, so the drought against Dublin was longer than the drought for Sam. And I don't care. I completely see why people are saying, you've got to win the final now, but that doesn't change how happy you feel in the moment. It was the single greatest moment as a sports fan, and it won't be topped. Unless they do something so weird in the final, and the final is decided.
Well, it won't be topped this year. But maybe they might do a 5 in a row in your lifetime, which would...
I don't think a consecutive All Ireland will ever come close to getting. No, I don't think so. I think the whole point is
killed Dublin. You've killed. That's what it feels like.
That's the whole point. Yeah. That's the whole point. That
and
is.
It could be so psychologically scarring for that group that now you're the team with the upper hand. There's a Kevin McManaman bang off this.
Yeah, it's
in reverse, obviously.
Yeah, but I think it's the Cluxton in 2011 moment, and that was just absolutely galling from the opposite perspective. And they always say that you kind of remember the lowest moments more than the joy and the happy moments. That's just not true after what Sean O'Shea did on Sunday. I think this will go down for every Kerry fan as the greatest singular moment as a supporter of that team.
Right, okay, that's interesting. Do the Dublin bandwagoners understand they've only one game in Croke Park this year? Asks Richard Redballs. Shifty Lad says, I really give Galway a big chance at this final, lads. 7-2, great price, and imagine the poor Mayo supporters looking at it through their fingers. Yeah, Nathan said it would be great if all the remaining teams could lose. And Stephen says, with David Clifford's composure, I'm sure he would have scored the penalty. The conditions with the crosswind and the heat were major factors on both teams. And look, it was the hottest day of the year up to that point. Clifford taking penalties, he's such a good striker of the ball. You can't take Sean O'Shea off the penalties. You're not going to. But I didn't remember that O'Shea takes the penalties. I was surprised. It was like,
yeah, same.
Just give it to Clifford.
Yeah, and Clifford's taken penalties before. Sports psychology is a weird thing, isn't it? Like, Sean O'Shea's penalty was so bad that he would have had to have been affected by the Comerford injury and the clear mind games that were at play. The ingenuity from the Dublin shithousery.
It was all time. We
couldn't believe it.
We haven't talked about Evan Comerford's game is the greatest single monument to shithousery in GAA history. He is he's like all of Tyrone and Armagh combined into one person in one game. The bit at the end, I didn't even notice this. You see this, right?
Shaking the posts.
I didn't know it at the time.
Oh yeah,
I didn't see it at all.
Yeah, it was. That was pretty funny.
And the thing is, you get away with it. The rules are like, if he shakes the posts and the ball bangs off the post while it's shaking, he gets a booking. There's no retake.
All right, okay.
That's it. That's your chance.
Henley got a retake. The Henley thing came into my head as well on Sunday. I was like, just please somebody run in front of Sean O'Shea here because he's going to miss it and then we get another goal.
The only other thing about that was that Derry did the 5-man wall. Right?
Yeah, and Conor Glass turning around in circles.
Yeah, Dublin had 3 men. I was like, lads, this might be time for you to throw somebody up.
Oh, but then, I'm not sure did you see this, but
rugby lifting.
Joe O'Connor was going up to one of the Dublin lads standing and shoving him around. And I'm like, you're going to give away a hot ball here. Like, just don't touch them. Let them do what they want.
One last thing. He took about 4.5 minutes over the free.
He did, yeah.
And is there no point where it's like, throwing that up now, you had your chance?
Yeah.
Surely we were borderline with that.
I'm not sure. I was just kind of, to be honest, I was just kind of thinking, is he taking enough time here where he's actually going to let Dublin go back up the pitch again?
I thought so too. Just for the sake of the game.
Yeah.
We deserve that.
Yeah, but there's no replays, you see. So he's not getting the message from on high saying, get this day to another day.
But out of, sporting blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Paul McGee says, I was about to ask, Owen has touched on it. Was Sean O'Shea's free better than Maurice Fitz's free kick? I mean,
I'm not sure it was better, but it was a better moment, even if Kerry lose the final.
Well, let's wait and we're a prisoner of the moment right now. But if they lose the final, that moment will be soured for you forever.
It won't be soured. No, the final will be the sour moment.
Yeah, but the season will be you'll be.
Yeah, the season overall will, but you can't forget how you felt in that moment.
No, it's true. It's true. I'd say he felt feverish when Maurice Fitz.
Yeah,
but the same.
Yeah,
so, it's just that in retrospect you're like, well, it didn't really mean that much, did it?
I meant loads.
Kieran Azardi says, good morning from London, gentlemen. Did you ever see more turnovers in a game like the game on Sunday? Superb, and things that you can learn from. I thought both teams managed to keep possession of the ball for a long time, and then the random bad solo straight into your opponent. I was like, well, is it nerves? What's going on? Excellent all-stars top quality players, some of the best young players in the country, soloing the ball into contact and it careering off their shin. I was like, wow, what's going on here?
Yeah, like the kind of the lateral hand passing and slow methodical build up is fairly nerve shredding. It was obviously very funny that the Dubs were booing the Kerry lateral hand passing. Like, have you watched your team? have you seen how you got the 6 in a row?
I met somebody afterwards who was complaining about Kerry's cynicism. I was like, hang on a second, what? Like, did you see your goalkeeper?
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I think that maybe Kerry people would have complained about Dublin cynicism in the past when they were losing. And you'd always come to this realisation a few days later that Kerry needed to find that edge and needed to find that level as well if they were going to be winners. Rather than complaining about the opposition.
Exactly, and that's what the point I was making about Kildare. They need to dark arts their way through the game, and then you're 4 goals down after 15
At certain
minutes.
sections, like I think even Galway on Saturday kind of showed that, like early on, there was a lot of Galway fans around me who were very impatient about their slow build-up play, and I was like, I can see where you're coming from, but also this speaks to me of a team who just aren't panicking yet. Like they haven't like really pressed that button at all. They're happy to keep going with what their game plan instruction was, which was to slow the game down. Don't let Derry counter at pace, and don't let them get their early goal. And they were pretty well tuned into that. And I think that mental strength was something maybe that kind of stood out to me from Saturday. Kind of a winning mentality that Galway had.
Kenny the dad says Sean O'Shea should have been sent off for kicking the keeper in the head, but hey ho, I saw a lot of people outraged at what happened. It's like, I don't know. Are you allowed to just lie in the ball? Don't think you are. Is that another penalty?
I think the last couple of days have probably shown that there's the Twitter is definitely where the worst things happen. Like seeing some of the stuff that people are saying of Sean O'Shea, like, you know, and kind of the suggestion that he deliberately went out to kick Evan Comerford in the head.
Well,
and
he's
also
the ball.
Also the victim mentality of so many people out there was like, if that was a dub.
Oh,
like
man.
the kind of the self-centered nature of some of the analysis on Twitter in particular. If that was a dub, if that was John Small, he would have been a Mountjoy. I saw somebody say, I was like, didn't John Small get away with the very incident that you're talking about last year? Didn't that go unpunished? And Dublin almost scored a goal off it and almost survived that thing. But regardless of that, it's like what about us? We are the victims here, which I guess all sports fans do feel.
Danny Mack says, I feared for Comerford after he really got kicked in the head. Too much Kerry joy is being taken from that win, says Dean M. Come on, lads, these are better than that. Great free kick, but a lot less pressure on a winning kick versus an equaliser for the replay. Obviously, it wouldn't have been a replay, but I mean, there is more pressure on the.
There is, yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't really matter. It's still quite a lot of pressure, and also you are a legend for doing it.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm not sure is that person from Dublin, but like, did they say the same thing about Stephen Cluxton and that kick? It's like it's not as memorable anymore because it was to win the game. Yeah, forget about it. I mean, there was no pressure on that kick. It wasn't to survive. It wasn't coming from behind.
You have literally spoken to Sean O'Shea on this show about his process for a moment like this. It was like you were. I don't know if you've read The Secret. I certainly have not read The Secret.
I've not read The Secret.
But I've seen enough of it tweeted into my timeline to know that this is kind of what you were doing. You were manifesting for Sean O'Shea to score something like this. You were wielding your power, your Kerry Mafia power for good.
Yeah, at long last, the magic powers worked.
Did you feel a little bit responsible?
I did, yeah.
Sean, tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah.
If you've missed one, you ask him, if you miss one, what do you do? And he's like, he's just missed a penalty. And he's like, do you know what? I remember that time Sheahan interviewed me. Shane, he would have got your name correct.
He would have.
And I just blink it away. That's what I do. So blink it away, Sean.
You're welcome.
He's thinking of you.
You're welcome.
When the ball's going down, there's just that moment where the whole place goes silent for him. We're all on Maelstrom. He's silent, thinking, OTB AM that time. Yeah, your man was right. That's what I did. Yeah, Grant, stick it over.
What's his name again? Yeah. Like he also said in that piece that like he took a year out after doing his leaving cert and just became like a professional minor footballer, and he was down the local pitch every day just pinging 45s, and he said that was the year he became a very good free taker, which was interesting. And I think the context around that conversation as well was the start of the 2020 championship season, and 19 he almost like loses the All-Ireland for Kerry. Remember, he fouls Dean Rock over by the sideline in the drawn game. Rock misses the free eventually, and it does go to a replay. But like that could have also been a part of the context on Sunday where Sean O'Shea lost the All-Ireland for Kerry in 19. A long-range free is scored by Rock in 19, and the mirror image is him doing it to knock Dublin out 3 years later.
Right. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish your day. Your comments are rolling in on our YouTube stream. They're also at Off the Ball AM on Twitter. Daniel Harris is coming up in just a moment. We're going to talk about the Manchester United pre-season and how it's going. Andy Friend is going to join us at 8:10. We've got the sports pages for you at 8:35. Lee Keegan's going to join us at 8:50 for his reflection on the weekend's games. Seana Cooke at 9:10. Monday Night Rugby at 9:30. And then Keith Wood is going to join us live again at 10 o'clock on a new stream to give us post-match reaction to the game between the New Zealand Maoris and Ireland. It is All-Ireland hurling final week. While we're talking football, it's time for us to turn our attention to the hurling. We're going to have Tommy Welsh in studio with us tomorrow. That's how important and big it is. He's coming all the way up from Kilkenny just to talk to us about the hurling tomorrow. We have 4 priceless tickets to give away on the show this week, and it's all with thanks to Bord Gosh Energy. 2022 marks the 6th year of Bord Gosh Energy sponsorship of the GAA Hurling All-Ireland Senior Championship, and to celebrate, every day this week we're giving away a €150 one-for-all voucher, and more importantly, each winner will go into Friday's draw for an incredible grand prize of a €1,500 one-for-all voucher and 4 tickets to Sunday's All-Ireland final between Limerick and Kilkenny. To enter, tune into tonight's show. It's all thanks to Bord Gosh Energy. You can search the hashtag Gift of the Gab for more. Now, we return to the weekly drama that is Manchester United. Daniel Harris. Daniel, good morning to you. How are you? Oh,
hello, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm reading reports of training sessions at the moment. That's the stage we're at with the Manchester United correspondent. It's a tough beast. And yet, it's genuinely interesting in a way that they're maybe they didn't have the access under the previous manager to try and see exactly what was happening. But it does seem like Ten Hag wants everybody to know we're changing our style of play. I'm in charge of the training sessions. I'm telling the players literally what to do, and this is our future. So when you're reading those, are you seeing stuff that makes you think, okay, yeah, there's an adult in the room, this is all good? Or are you like, what's going on here? We're still a little bit behind where we need to be?
It's funny, I laughed when you said we're seeing training sessions, because that does feel like a piece of news, doesn't it? Because for the last little bit of time, United haven't looked like they were coaching anyway, really, under Ralph Rangnick. Under Solskjaer, it was a little bit different. You could see that some things were coached. The way that they were able to counter-attack was excellent. But in terms of general controlling play, that wasn't the case. And I think that's going to be quite a significant change. And under the new management, the aim will be to try and dominate games. And Erik ten Hag has managed a team in a different league, but a team who were able to control games. And everything that everyone is saying is that the players are enjoying the sessions. I mean, I don't just mean the stuff that they're saying to MUTV or whatever, but some of the writers who obviously have some contacts on the ground do seem to think that things are improving in that aspect. And I think we were sat here last season saying for most of the season that although this team is absolutely dreadful, they needn't be as dreadful as this. And I think we will see something better, because it's not possible for any of these guys to play worse than they did last season.
The specific bit that I was reading about was where Aaron Wan-Bissaka was being told to tuck in when the ball was on the other side of the field, and how Malaysia, the new left back, is far more adept at actually doing the thing that the manager wants. So I mean, in a way, I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka got completely written off. I still think he'd make a really good centre back, but anyway, maybe just coaching the players is all they actually need to be better than they were, and the transfer window is actually less important than getting more out of the current players.
I wouldn't say one was more important than the other. I think the thing with Wan-Bissaka is that he did have some potential, and things didn't go well for him last season. So the problem I would say with him is, you say he could be a good centre-back, and sometimes you watch him and think that, but his inability to look over his shoulder and defend the back post is one of those things that you shouldn't really need telling about. And you would definitely, if you're not able to do it as a right back, then doing it in a different position would also be problematic. I think the thing with Wan-Bissaka in particular, apart from that back post thing, which has been a massive problem all the time he's been at United, is that the improvements on the ball that you hope to see weren't so forthcoming, because Wan-Bissaka got to youth team level as a winger. So I kind of assumed that with a little bit more coaching, perhaps a little bit more confidence to go and do the things, he would be able to do them, because how else could you have possibly got that far as a winger? Then you would watch United play, and obviously United were totally focused on the left wing, and that meant that you got much less out of Jadon Sancho when he was playing on the right, and that was a lot to do with Wan-Bissaka. So if you look at the diagrams of where Jadon Sancho gets the ball on the left versus on the right, he gets the ball in much better positions when he's been playing on the left, because on the right he gets no help. And that means that teams can almost forget about United's right wing, because they can concentrate their resources on defending the left. And then if the ball does get switched over, it's likely to be only one player who's going to be any kind of danger. Now, very early on, we were told that Erik ten Hag had told Wan-Bissaka he could go. Now, that may or may not be the case, but it did. I mean, you talked about Malacia. It is kind of strange that not that United have signed a left back, because I think what's happened there is ten Hag has said, this guy's brilliant and he's cheap, we must get him. And even though a left back's not as necessary as a right back, but there don't seem to be any plans to sign a right back. The rumours you see about United, apart from Jurrien Timber, who's not coming, who was presumably being signed as centre back anyway, who might be able to cover a couple of other positions, but there are no connections with the right back. So it would seem amazing to me if the manager decided that he thought that Dalot and Wan-Bissaka was sufficient in that area. I don't think he'd want to rely on Ethan Laird at this point, but perhaps he wants to see all three of them before deciding what he's going to do in that position.
I guess the other thing that's interesting is that he's going to stick with the outgoing captain, which is one of those big decisions that the captain of Manchester United is a totemic figure in English football. And I guess he's decided, I have Harry Maguire here, I'm not going to get enough money to replace him. So again, maybe I'm going to try and use him as something that will be a useful asset for me. And one way of doing that is to tell him I love him and I believe in him, and it's man management. Is this something that is hopeful for Manchester United fans, or is it a bit concerning?
No, I mean, I'm not sure, because what he said was that Maguire's the captain, but if he's committing 50 million euros or whatever it could be to sign Lisandro Martinez, then Harry Maguire's not going to play every game, probably, is he? Because obviously Varane is always capable of sustaining some kind of injury, but if everyone's fit, then Maguire's not necessarily going to be in the team. So if Maguire's not in the team, then you make a different decision. But I think that turning up and before you've played any games, telling someone upon whom you currently have to rely that they're not going to be captain anymore, at the same time agitating them and anyone else who might be their mates in the squad before anyone's actually played any football, just doesn't seem like a move. I think we'll know what's going to happen with Harry Maguire, not based on what Ten Hag says in a pre-season, before a pre-season's even started, but what he says if and when he has a different option. And if he's got Varane and Martinez available, then it seems unlikely that you would go and spend 50 million quid on someone for them to be good next season, or for them to take 6 months to settle in or whatever. The plan, I imagine, would be that he's your left-sided centre-back because he's left-footed, he's got a good range of passing, and then the other position is between, they've got Lindelof, Varane and Maguire, and if they're all fit, that doesn't sound like a very difficult decision as to who you're going to pick.
Do you think Ten Hag is planning for life with or without Cristiano Ronaldo?
I'm not sure. I mean, Ronaldo, the thing about Ronaldo is that it seemed a strange way to go about getting a move by briefing that you wanted one to various people, unless you had an out. And increasingly, it sounds like he doesn't have a particular out, because if he did, it feels like that might be further along by now. So it doesn't look like Chelsea are going to buy him. Doesn't look like Bayern Munich are going to buy him. And apart from those two clubs, where on earth could he possibly go to have any chance of winning the Champions League? The answer is not obvious. So I think there's a fairly reasonable chance that Ronaldo is going to stay for that, just because even if just for that reason alone, he doesn't have anywhere to go who can afford they can afford to pay his wages, and he can play in the Champions League and have a chance of winning it.
Does that create a little bit of a backlog? A backlog. Does that create a little bit of an issue in the sense that United would have been forced into just bringing in some new blood into attacking positions, probably signed a new centre forward, even just by into the fact that they would have had Ronaldo's wages off the books, and that forward planning in that position just gets pushed back a tad? Does that concern you at all?
I don't think so, because although United were interested in Darwin Núñez, apart from that, there aren't many obvious centre forwards on the market who you would go and sign and say, this one is the one to have. I also think that I think what they would probably been trying to do is try and spend the money, like try and do the midfield and the defence this summer, give the attackers another chance, because there are some good players there. If you've got Elanga, you've got Sancho, you've got Rashford. It looks like you've probably got Martial as well. And those players can do much more than they showed that they could do last season. Plus, you've also got Bruno Fernandes, who's a reliable goal scorer. So I think that the idea would probably be that the midfield just needed sorting immediately. So they're trying to get De Jong in to play there, and it looks like they've already got Christian Eriksen. So that area of the side has started. They've signed one defender, they're trying to sign another defender. And I think then the idea would be to see what happens with the attackers that they've got this season, including Ronaldo. Then Ronaldo leaves, and because you've dealt with most of the rest of the team, then almost the entirety of the transfer budget next season, if you need it, you can spend on the best striker available. And that kind of money wouldn't necessarily be available this summer. And also, you don't necessarily know what kind of player you're after or who that player is. Now, that's not a foolproof scheme, because let's assume Ronaldo doesn't stay. Let's assume Ronaldo stays this summer, but then leaves when his contract runs out the following summer. Then whoever you buy is not going to be the same kind of striker as Ronaldo, because that player doesn't really exist. So the question then is, can Ten Hag get Ronaldo to do what he needs him to do? Will Ronaldo do it? Is he prepared to? Or can you find a workaround that means the team can function with Ronaldo not quite doing what Ten Hag would usually want the centre forward to do? And then next season, you can slot someone in once you've got a more coherent team, a better idea of whether Marcus Rashford's going to be any use anymore, a better idea of whether Elanga's going to be good enough. And then you take a view as to, what kind of striker you want, and you've got a better idea, because the players that you might sign have all had another year to try and show whether or not they're good enough.
The point you were making earlier on about Jadon Sancho's game being impacted by playing in front of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the whole team will be impacted if there is a requirement to play Ronaldo. And I mean, obviously he's not required to, but there will be this sense that you have to pick Ronaldo because he's the goal scorer, and it might not be the right thing for the team. So that's a difficult balancing act for a new manager who wants to win the fans over, who wants a long-term future at the club, and who has to find a solution to a problem that didn't really end up being easily found last season by two separate managers.
That's true, but I think, Ten Hag has managed that kind of Ajax, so where for a while he played Dusan Tadic up front, and that succeeded nicely, and then he replaced him with Sebastian Haller, who's a completely different player, and that worked too. I think the decision you might need to make with Ronaldo is, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to, because last season he sort of found himself almost playing two positions, where he'd be trying to come deep and get involved in the play, but then you'd also need him more or less playing between the width of the posts. I think that he's much more likely to get one set of sensible instructions this season than he got last season. I think that also, if you think about the fact that teams were just strolling through United, there was no midfield buffer really, so teams were able to get through United's midfield quite quickly. United weren't able to retain possession and control games, and one of the reasons the midfield needs sorting is just because the current existing players aren't good enough. But another reason the midfield needed sorting was because the combination of players didn't allow you to control the game. Should United get Frenkie de Jong, that will give them a much better chance of controlling games. And if you've got that, it means that you're taking the pressure off the defence, because they're not constantly getting attacked because there's some ballast in front of them. But also you're getting much more out of the attackers, because you're going to create much more just by virtue of having much more of the ball and much better quality possession with the ball. So that also will mean that you get more out of Ronaldo or anyone else who happens to be playing centre forward. Okay,
I have two quick questions on the De Jong situation. Are we sure he's still that good and that effective? He's been okay at Barcelona. You wouldn't say it's been a stunning success, which is kind of why he's available/unavailable. That's the first question. And the second one is really, if he is that important to everything, if he's like the thing that unlocks the whole situation, then why the hell haven't they just paid whatever the money is and get him in? Because they can totally afford it.
I can see to some extent why they don't want to pay the money. Like why he's deferred wages for Barcelona during COVID. Why on earth should United foot that bill? Why should they pay his wages for when he was playing to Barcelona? I mean, United don't run in the same way that some football clubs run, where they just give the money because the people who run the club want to take money out rather than put money in, and they're bothered about making money before they're bothered about being good at football. So there's that, but no one wants people to laugh at them or to feel that, like, why should United pay his wages for a time when he was playing for Barcelona? So I do have an understanding of that. And there's also, with the money, there's an opportunity cost. Because United's then, if you spend money on one thing, can't spend it on another thing. So I can see why they don't want to do it. But yeah, at some point you might think sometimes you need to put the football first and say, we need him, we want to get him in, let's just get this done and be done with it. So I do see both sides of that. But then in terms of De Jong and his success at Barcelona, I think the kind of role that Ten Hag has in mind for De Jong is not the kind of role he plays at Barcelona. Barcelona play 4-3-3. They play Busquets in front of the back four, and then in front of them, they've got Pedri and Gavi as basically two eights, if we have to call things that now. Whereas I think De Jong, he's not really a six because he wants to run about the pitch and get into adventures. So you can't have him playing just in front of the back four because then you're limiting what he's able to do. So I think the way that Ten Hag's going to play is he's probably going to play 4-2-3-1. So he wants someone else next to De Jong, so that De Jong is the guy you want taking the ball off the back four because he's a great passer and a brilliant ball carrier. So he can take the ball off the defence and kind of set the play. But he's not going to be an anchor because in order to be able to do that effectively, he's got to move. You want him to be popping up in different areas of the pitch. So I'm not sure who's going to play next to him. So to me, that's actually a more pertinent question than what are they going to do on next to De Jong to allow De Jong to do his thing, than is De Jong still good? Although when you sign any player, pretty much, you never really know what they're going to do until you see him. You see all these things that people write and say about this team won the transfer window like it's some kind of separate sport, or this team's had a great window. And the truth is you never know. United won the league 3 years in a row. They signed Veron and Van Nistelrooy, and then they didn't win the league. And sometimes it's about the balance of a team, but it's also can just be even more. It can be about the alchemy of the personalities as well. And that kind of thing, you never really know how good someone is until you see him play.
So what's the scenario most likely then here where Manchester United have a midfield of Frankie de Jong and another? Who is that person, do you think? Who do you think it's going to be?
I don't know. If you watch, watching Christian Eriksen play for Brentford last season, he played quite deep. I'm not sure that you'd feel that you could get away with De Jong, Eriksen and Bruno in all the games, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it in some of the games with Eriksen playing a bit deeper. Otherwise, I think it's more likely in the end to be McTominay than Fred, because Fred is more of he's kind of a mouse at Fred. You want him chasing about, winning the ball back a bit higher up the pitch. McTominay is also not someone who's really a number six, but he's a better ball carrier than Fred. He's more physical. And the thing with McTominay, I think, is his long-range passing can be quite good. The problem with him is it's more about explaining to him, and I don't understand why anyone's been unable to explain this to him previously, because it doesn't seem very complicated. But explaining to him that he finds himself unable to take the ball off the back four quite often because he's standing in the cover shadow. So he's blocked by someone pressing from the other team. Now, that doesn't seem like something that should be difficult to sort out. So if they can sort that out, then my guess would be McTominay. But if you said to me, which players do you want to buy this summer? I would be saying my top three in order would be midfielder, right back. I guess what's happened is Ten Hag knows that Lisandro Martinez is available, so he thinks he's good enough to play for him, so he's trying to buy him because he's available and he knows that he's good. And I think one of the things with Ten Hag is that because you've got players who'll come to United not really because of United, because of him, it means that it's possible that the best players he can sign are players that have played for him before, because the other best players he might want to sign won't come to United at this point because they're not in the Champions League. It's been a bit of a graveyard for anyone half decent over the last 9 years. But there are other players who will come and play for Ten Hag because they played for him before, so they're signing to play for him because they trust him. That's
fair enough. One quick question about England's 8-0 win over Norway last night. We expected that to be a game which was much more even. So it's ultimately a massive statement from the England women's team at a home Euros. Football's coming home.
Yes, I mean that was a brilliant performance because Norway are not mugs, and I think one of the things that you're seeing with this England team is the difference a proper coach makes. England should have won the last World Cup when they got to the final, really, but they didn't seem to know what they were doing because Phil Neville was managing them. I mean, even to this day, it's just absolutely staggering that Phil Neville somehow got that job based on what exactly. And it felt to me at the time that was the difference, a proper manager, and they win that competition. Whereas now they've got a much better manager and they've got so many players in form. The way that they've sorted out the midfield with Walsh and Stanway has given them some really good control. Beth Mead, just also someone who I think maybe lacked a bit of confidence the season before last, but under Jane Sideval, she's come on so much, and they are absolutely rammed for the goals, and not just on the pitch either, but they've got so much on the bench as well that they've got the opportunity to change games that aren't going their way. I think the one signs of caution is just there are other good teams in this competition, and I couldn't help while I was watching the highlights. So I was on the plane yesterday, so I didn't actually see the game live. Thinking of Argentina against Serbia in 2006, where you kind of watched that game. Argentina just wiped Serbia off the pitch, and you thought, oh my gosh, how is a team? This is the best team in this competition. Yeah. But it's not that often the best team in the group stages is still the best team at the end of the competition. No, but other teams will be watching that and they will be hoping they avoid England in the draw.
Well, that Argentina team did famously leave Leo Messi on the bench when they needed a goal in extra time. So, you would hope that something similar might not happen to this England team if that's going to be the case. Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers. It's Daniel Harris there. A slight delay on the line. 12 minutes past 8. The New Zealand, the Māori All Blacks are 5-0 up against Ireland. They made a whirlwind start. We knocked on basically from the kick-off, from the scrum. We ended up giving away a penalty eventually, and just off the top line-out ball was run into the far corner, and it was a beautiful, beautiful try for the Māori All Blacks. But it looks like Ireland have just about to equalise. Are we? Yeah. Is that Jimmy O'Brien with a try? It is. Is it going to be given? Bit of quick thinking from Keith Earls. Yeah. Try's been given. It's Larmour. He runs it in under the posts. So it's going to be a 7-5 lead for Ireland after 8 minutes of that game this morning. Michael Bent is on the bench for Ireland. It looks like Finlay Bealham is not available today. We're going to try and find out if he's actually injured or what the crack is with that. Now, just a reminder that Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. You can get it in Apple Green. Braeburn Coffee Goodness at Apple Green is also available for one lucky viewer. All you got to do to win a €100 voucher is to enter our competition. Check out @OffTheBall on Twitter. Like and retweet our Braeburn competition post and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the best on-the-go coffee experience on the road. Available at Apple Green today. After the break, we're live with Connacht head coach Andy Friend. First, here's Matt Williams talking about why he would actually start Joey Carberry in the final test this Saturday. Back after this.
Well, Joe, if I was Andy Farrell, I'd be playing mind games big time. And I would play my bench, I'd take my good players out, I'd start Carberry and say to New Zealand, we don't care, we've already got your measure, and give these other guys time. In the big scheme of things, does it really matter? Everyone's going to go, yeah, it does. Tell you what matters, and what matters most to Irish rugby, has done since 1987, is to get out of the quarterfinals and make semi-finals at a World Cup. That's what matters. And I would play the mind games in New Zealand and say, well, okay, if we lose the third test, but we played all our kids or our secondary players to give them experience in case someone gets injured in the last pool game in the World Cup and we're playing New Zealand the next week. Now, there's a chance they could play France, but let's just assume France win at home against New Zealand. To me, the winning of the test series, that's for the fans. That's okay, I get it. But if you're going to think strategically, say, what is the big picture here? It's the World Cup. They need to start Carberry. They need to start guys who may have to play in a super big game on a really big day. And this is what's happened to Irish rugby over many World Cups where they haven't done it. Let's think of Ian Madigan. Let's think of these guys that haven't been given the opportunity on a really big day. Don't play them against Italy. That's not a big day. This is a big day, and here's your chance. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Andy Farrell will, and the pressure from within the group will be too much. I think they'll play their it's similar to what they played last week. And it's going to be a very close game. New Zealand won't play as bad, for sure. They can't. Rory might know. Can't remember the last time New Zealand lost 2 tests in a row at home. So you've got to say New Zealand will come back hard. They're very hard to beat in Wellington as well. The Cake Tin is not a pleasant place, but usually blowing a gale and can be wet. But it's still going to be a fascinating game either way. We won't know what Farrell will do, what mind games he plays, or does he just front up?
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This summer, we're bringing you double Koi gig.
For me, she's the best English centre-back. Play your best players in their best position. I don't think the captain is droppable, particularly after making the statement of dropping Steph Houghton. You'd love to see someone like McGill pop up with the goal up top and just set the place on fire. You'd love to see a fairy tale story.
For the best insight and analysis from this summer's Euros, subscribe to the Koi Gig Pod on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It is 17 minutes past 8. Ireland lead the Māori All Blacks 7-5 with 11 minutes on the clock in the game there this morning. The news is that Michael Bent is on the bench. Finlay Bealham was ruled out after the warm-up with injury, so hopefully it's not too serious and he'll be able to take his place in the matchday squad for the game on Saturday morning. Now, Connacht Rugby are actually organising a special provincial-wide charity cycle on Saturday the 13th of August. It's in aid of Sligo native Claire Carpenter. On the 10th of February, the 35-year-old Sligo native Claire Carpenter suffered a serious and life-changing event. So Care for Claire is the name of the cycle. After a few days of feeling unwell, she suffered a stroke at her home in Killaney, and after being rushed to the ICU of Beaumont, she was placed in an induced coma for over a week following a life-saving operation. She's now thankfully on the road to recovery, but significant funds need to be raised to allow her to continue her rehabilitation in Dunleary and eventually lead an independent life at home. The 218-kilometre cycle from the sports ground in Galway to Sligo RFC will involve both Connacht staff members and club volunteers, all with the aim of raising much needed funds. You can support this event on social using the hashtag Care for Claire. One person participating in it is Connacht head coach Andy Friend. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Initiatives like this are they're hugely important for the individual at the centre of it, but it's also a kind of measure of the community aspect of your team and the people who work with you and the supporters of the team as well. So, you know, it's important that stuff like this happens, not just for the individual, but also just to kind of remind everybody that the community is a real thing, that the community of Connacht Rugby is a real thing, and when one of their own needs help, they're there for them. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, the 3 words that depict our values are ambition, belief, and community. And community's probably the biggest one. And as you said correctly there, something like this happens to a staff member and staff member's partner in Claire, 3 young kids. Everyone wants to get behind that. Everyone wants to support, and it shows you the power of community, to be honest with you, and also the power of rugby that there has been such amazing support already. But this is another initiative that's come forward to try and raise some much needed funds for Claire and her family.
How much of the cycle will you be doing?
I'll try and do the whole thing, mate.
Right, okay, 218 kilometres. Because one of the times that we spoke to you over the last 18 months, you'd suffered a bit of an injury. I hope you're fully recovered ahead of a cycle that distance.
Yeah, it'll test it out. But yeah, that's about 17 months ago now. I did not even that, maybe 14 months ago, I did a quad tendon. But I've been back on the bike knowing that the 13th of August is looming. So I've got some K's in the legs. We'll see how we go.
Right, okay. How has your off-season been? What's it been like?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a good break, but we're back now. We're back into training. So we had our first day yesterday, and it was mentioned to the players. We talked about important dates for the players, and the 13th of August was the first one we put up. It's an important one for us as a squad. Because players will be involved along that route. We're dropping into the 5 counties of Connacht, and we're going to have some fan days there too. So it'll be a huge event for us. But yeah, the boys are back. They're ready to go, and we got 9 weeks before our first game.
Right. Famously, after the first Ireland win against the All Blacks in Chicago, there was a picture of all the Connacht lads on the field. There was another one at the weekend. It's becoming fairly consistent that a strong Connacht representation is a prerequisite when we do beat the All Blacks. So I guess there's plenty talk about that amongst your squad. Like, how do you make sure that the buzz around the players that are there representing Ireland at the weekend feeds into and serves as an inspiration for the squad who are training in the sports ground and doing the hard yards with, I'm sure, the very unpleasant pre-season?
Yeah, well, we're a very tight squad, and with the 5 lads that are over there, as well as Pete Wilkins and Robbie Fox, who's one of our masseuses. We got a contingent of 7 Connacht men over there, and everyone's always you're in contact with them whilst you're going. So there's a real buzz that's come out of that. We've been on off season, but you're never off. I will say that. So it's been nice to be able to every Saturday morning get up and or Wednesday a few weeks ago, this morning now with that Maori game that's on, get up and watch a bit of footy and watch some of your teammates and your colleagues actually pulling on the green of Ireland and doing their best for them. So there is a real buzz around that, and I know we're missing the game this morning because we actually talked about pausing training to watch it, but it's the second day of our pre-season, so we want to just make sure we get things ticking on. We'll all be watching the game on Saturday, no doubt.
Do you watch the games together? As a kind of contingent?
No, we don't, but there's a lot of texting going on in between them, that's for sure.
And do you find yourself like getting extra motivated and extra animated when it's Bundy on the ball or one of the Connacht boys?
Yeah, you do. Like, you take a real interest and a real care for those men. So when you see them involved, it's fantastic. When Pete Wilkins gets up and speaks with 20 minutes to go in the games, that's been brilliant to watch as well. So, listen, there's always your own. You wear the glasses of the province you work for. So, whenever our fellas are touching the footy, it's the heart rate goes up a touch. But you're also very proud of the fact that Ireland have done so well on the weekend. Cian
Prendergast is obviously playing there now. He's your Young Player of the Year. He's got an extended deal with you guys. Can you talk to us a bit about his evolution? Because obviously, he's being talked about as somebody who's a potential successor to Peter O'Mahony, which is massive praise, but it doesn't seem ridiculous. It seems like, everybody can kind of see it.
Yeah, he's got a very bright future. I mean, he's a good rugby player. You need that, but more importantly, you need to have the right attitude. And what Cian's got is the right attitude. He's very, very professional about the way he goes about his business. He sets himself really stretch-worthy goals, I'll call them, but he's got strong goals there where he wants to get to. He knows where he wants to go, and he's not afraid to ask questions or do the work. And that's what the best players do, from my experience. I've seen a lot of talented footballers, but if you haven't got the right attitude to go with it, they tend not to reach the dizzy heights. So for Cian, I think the world's his oyster at the moment. Brilliant that he's getting that experience over there, and he'll come back and. Listen, he'll have to fight hard because we've got some new additions to our squad this year as well, with Josh Murphy coming in, with Seamus Hurley-Langdon coming in, Paul Boyle is looking great, come back from pre-season, Connor Oliver, Jared Butler, a couple of young academy fellas coming through as well. So it won't be a walk-up start for him, but that's what you want to, and that's why I'm really proud of the squad we've got together, because everyone's going to have to be at their best if they want to wear that 1-15 jersey.
What does that extra work ethic look like in a modern rugby dressing room? What are you seeing from Cian Prendergast that suggests that he does have that ability to go the extra mile?
Yeah, it's the attention to detail on the small things. So, the way he'll pore over a video clip and then come in and ask questions about that. He wants to be challenged. He wants to be coached. He's not afraid to be out there doing his extras. The better players tend to be the ones that get in early and do their stuff. Sometimes you can get tripped up a little bit by having players that they want to be seen in there, but the blokes who want to be seen in there, and the blokes who are just in there because that's what they do, and that's what makes them them. And Keane's one of them. He couldn't give two hoots whether we're watching out the window, but he's just doing his stuff because he knows it's going to make him better, and you get that vibe off him. So listen, he's very professional. He's very driven, and as I said before, he's got a very bright future.
We saw Jack Carty posting pictures from his hospital bed of the surgery. When do you expect him back? Will he be ready for the start of the season?
Yeah, we hope so. He's got another scan on that, or an appointment on that wrist over the coming weeks. So we'll get a further update. But I think it's the best thing that Jack could have done. The wrist wasn't right. It's a long season. It's heading into a World Cup year as well. So from my side, Jack Carty, to me, he's one of the best 10s in the country. So, but he needs to be fit. So, in order to get him fit, he needed to get that wrist right. We'll get him back to Connacht as quickly as we can, and hopefully that is for round one.
He's spoken very eloquently about the difficulties in the aftermath of the last World Cup. The job that you have is really difficult because there's obviously, like we're watching it this morning, and Mac Hansen has come from the far side of the world straight into the team and is now a key member of it. So you've got to manage everything when it comes to how people's international aspirations are feeding into their day-to-day job with you guys. Is that like just an individual thing where you talk to the players individually about what's going on, or do you try and set goals for everybody collectively that if we all improve, if we win more games, it's going to be harder and harder for the selectors to overlook you?
Yeah, I mean, there's an individual element to it, and the individual element is dependent upon whether the player's getting selected or not. Those that are getting selected, whether it be for Connacht or for Ireland, tend to be the happy ones. Those that aren't, it's tough for them because rejection and non-selection is not something they're used to. These young blokes have come through junior programs and school programs and underage programs where they've always been there. They've always been picked. So you've got to try and manage that. At the same time, they've got their own aspirations for not only Connacht but for their country. So it's never ending, and it changes from week to week. Someone can be on top of the world and everything's going well. All of a sudden you get an injury and now they're out, and that injury takes them 4 weeks. But in that 4 weeks, someone else has come over and looked really good, and then we keep selecting them. And what was someone sitting on top of the world, they're trying to climb their way back up the ladder, and you got to work with those young blokes. But that's part of being a pro footballer. It's part of life. It's not always plain sailing. And I'll go back to the reason we started this call today. We're talking about Ross and Claire, and their life was sailing along. They were a happy young family, and just like that, it changed. But there's always tomorrow. There's always a future, and there's always hope if you're prepared to work hard for it. And and when you get people behind you, like we do for our rugby players, or like the community's going to for both Ross and Claire and the family, the kids. You do see that there is hope out there, and it does push you on a little bit further, and that's what it's all about. So, footy's a microcosm of life. What we're seeing with the Care for Claire ride is an extension of that into the really important part of the community.
It's very easy sometimes to lose that context in a professional sports environment where everything that everybody does in their day job builds towards the performance and the result at the weekend. And it's pretty fair to say last season the results didn't go the way you would have wanted them to. You can't compare the difficulties that those guys are going through with the day job, and yet at the same time you feel like you kind of have to represent them now as well. So I don't know if it, like, we're all talking about meaning and purpose, particularly in a work environment, and like post-COVID, everybody is searching for something that will give our lives and embellish them a little bit more with a sense of purpose. Is this all part of Connacht finding even deeper purpose and deeper meaning?
Yeah, I think it's probably, as you said there, post-COVID, everyone's reset. You hit the reset button, and the things we used to do pre-COVID, you can look back, most of us look back on and say, geez, we were busy fools, weren't we? And we have to have learned something out of COVID. But I think as the world's starting to open up again too, the word's perspective, and and expectation are two words for me. Put things in perspective. Not expectation, I should say, acceptance, and acceptance of what we've currently got. They're two really powerful words that I think have come out of COVID, and for us, where we get the opportunity like this for Claire and her family to care for Claire Ride. Now, there's been a few things that have happened there. There's been a raffle, there's been a GoFundMe page. It's been enormously well supported for lots of reasons, because people are looking for the opportunity to support, and I think it's the growth again in Connacht rugby. I mentioned at the front end there, our values are ambition, belief, and community. Now, you can never be over ambitious, I don't believe. You've got to keep striving, because there's another opportunity for you. You've got to have enormous belief as to what you're about, and that comes through the rich history of Connacht rugby, 1886 and 1885. Sorry, when the whole thing started. And then this community thing is just going to grow and grow and grow. We've got a new facility coming here, which is going to add to the community. We've got clubs, 26 clubs out there through Connacht. We've got a playing group that want to play a brand of footy that excites the community and inspires. So all of those things, to me, just continue to layer on the depth of what Connacht rugby is all about, and then gives us, as the participants in that, a real joy to be able to go out there and do that.
Did you always have that point of view, Andy? Like that idea that it is part of a wider context, what you were doing even as a player and in your early days as a coach, or is that something that you had to learn over time?
I probably learned it over time. I mean, I've never just been singularly focused on rugby, but certainly the longer you've been in the game, I'm about to start my 29th year of pro coach, and so there's been a lot of water under that bridge. But and certainly as you go through life too, other obstacles land in your way, and you start to realise that, geez, we're pretty fortunate just to be able to coach footy, and there's a lot more to life than footy. So, for me, it's definitely something that I've learnt. I said I've never been just singularly focused on rugby, but the longer that I'm in the game now, the more that I do see the broader breadth of it and what it can offer. Not only ourselves that work in it, but everyone else that either watches it, supports it, has some touch with it. It's a pretty powerful obstacle, actually.
What would a successful season look like for you guys? I'm not asking for the secrets of the changing room here to be revealed, but like, how when you sit down and go, well, what will the end of the year? I'll look back and go, yeah, that was a really good one. What's on that list for you?
Yeah, well, we haven't discussed that as a team just yet, but I'll tell you, because I don't think it changes. Our goal is to always get in the Champions Cup. Now, we're not in the Champions Cup this year, which is the first time in the last 4 years that we haven't been in the Champions Cup. At the same time, the fact that we're in the Challenge Cup, I believe, gives us a much stronger opportunity to do two things. To one, try and win a Challenge Cup. That would be brilliant. I think the last 3 years has proven to ourselves that we do belong in the Champions Cup. Now, we're not in it this year, so if we honestly think we belong there, and we think we should be getting into finals, knockout stage as well, we've got to set the stall out there that we want to go and win the Challenge Cup. So that's going to be that would be a massive achievement for us, but I don't think it's beyond our reach. And the second thing is we want to get back in the Champions Cup, so you've got to finish in the top half of the URC. That's our bread and butter. That's where we want to get to. So for us to be able to achieve those two things, get in the knockout stages of Challenge Cup, get back into the Champions Cup, we would have had a very successful season.
Obviously, the league has become much more difficult with the arrival of the best franchises from South Africa as well. So that challenge, in previous years, you might have looked at it and gone, okay, I can see how we're going to get this number of wins and this number of points. That has definitely changed the dynamic. What's that been like in terms of preparation and just the challenge that poses?
Yeah, I mean, 4 new rugby teams that all play a slightly different style, and now you've also got, the travel of going across there and having 2 weeks over there, which we'd had with the Cheetahs and the Kings, but slightly different. They're better rugby teams, and other rugby teams are now getting stronger too. Like you look at some of the signings that have gone on at the Scarlets this year, and Benetton, for example. Like everyone's getting stronger. So. But I'm excited. At the same time, we've got a second year of a program where as you know, last year we had a new coach instruction. We got that rolling around again. We just had our first day yesterday. I can tell you the difference between our first day yesterday and our first day last year, when we had our new key principles that were introduced last year, chalk and cheese. So, we just had a meeting there this morning as a group of coaches, and we're all pretty buoyed by the fact that we're a long way further than we were this time last year. We've got a new rugby field coming this year at the sports ground, so that's going to assist us in playing the style of rugby we want to play. So, as we also know, like, life does keep changing. New rugby teams have entered, the competition's getting stronger, but at the same time, I think we're getting stronger, and I think, you know, we're continuing to build and learn to adapt to the brand of footy that we want to play, and I'm really happy with the squad we've got as well. So I'm excited by the year ahead.
Are the key principles the same as this time last year, or have they changed a little bit?
No, they stay the same, and I reckon that's the key to key principles. Yeah, you can't keep chopping and changing. You got to set your stall out, and that's what you believe in, and that's what we do believe in. So we'll roll that on again. We'll have a dish. We'll layer on again. It won't just be rolling out the same menu that we did last year, but certainly the foundations that we put in place last year will put us in really good stead for this year.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with the season, and if anybody does want to help and get involved, and is the cycle open to public participants, or is it just you guys who are doing it and having the days along the way? What's the best way for people? Because I think, you know, you're right, people do want to help.
Yeah, listen, there will be there'll be a lot more information coming out about the cycle. What we're going to have, it's because it's such a long cycle. We've targeted a cyclist from each club to come and try and join us. So there'll be about 20 cyclists on the trip, and that's it. I think as we get to the last 16 kilometres into Sligo, anyone can join us from that stage. So the more the merrier there. But along the way, we're going to have, I think it's at least 4 stopovers where people can come and join us. We'll have players there. We'll have the cycling group will come in there. There'll be a chance for photos and some ball games and all the rest of it. Listen, as we get closer to it, so it's not too far away now, but 13th of August, but as we get closer to it, some more information will come out about that, and we should be able to get a lot of people involved with it.
Well, listen, Andy, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Thanks for joining us today. Cheers.
Good on you, mate. Thank you for that.
It's Andy Friend there, the Connacht coach. Ireland lead the Mayo All Blacks 10-5. We obviously jinxed Cian Prendergast by talking about him right there because he's in the bin at the moment, but notwithstanding that, Ireland are camped on the Mayo All Blacks try line, and the referee is under a pile of bodies looking to see if there's been grounding. They never give those though, and he is saying we're short, or held up short, and so therefore it's going to be our scrum. Well, we obviously don't have the commentary there, but there's 6.5 minutes left of Ireland in the bin, 29 minutes on the clock, and he's gone back for an earlier penalty. Ireland look really good.
Certainly better than the last Maori game, it turns out, and conditions, if I remember correctly, aren't overly different. It was challenging enough the first day as well, skills under a bit of pressure, but Ireland looking a lot better, it seems, this time around. Be interested to see how they go in the second half. Kieran Frawley's obviously kicked a penalty there just a while ago. Nailed the conversion was straightforward for the try, but he's been pretty good from the boot. Like this is a really, I think that looks like a try.
It should have been, yeah, but the TV director was not willing to show that one until the next play happened, and I think, you know, we're learning a lot about what it's like to play in New Zealand. We knew already, but you just forget because it only happens every 3 or 4 years. You're like, oh, we actually need to beat everybody in the stadium.
Yeah,
including whatever. Anyway, a reminder that Connacht Rugby obviously are organising that special provincial-wide charity cycle on Saturday the 13th of August in aid of Sligo native Claire Carpenter. You can support the event on social using the hashtag #CareForClaire. Now, as we know, it's Ireland hurling final week. We'll be building up proper from tomorrow. There's another penalty for Ireland. Looks like should be a yellow card here for the All Blacks. 2022 marks the 6th year of Bord Gáis Energy sponsorship of the GAA Hurling All-Ireland Senior Championship, and we have 4 priceless tickets to give away on the show this week with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. Every day we're giving away a €150 one for all voucher. More importantly, each daily winner goes into Friday's draw for an incredible grand prize of a €1,500 one for all voucher and 4 tickets to Sunday's All-Ireland final between Limerick and Kilkenny. To enter, tune in to tonight's show. It's all thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. You can search the hashtag #GiftOfTheGab for more. Now, time for the sports pages.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be. No, I'm not. Yes. No.
Right, there's loads of good stuff in the sports pages today, actually. Kieran Sheahan, there is a yellow card there for the Māori All Blacks, so 14 men apiece. Ireland camped on the Māori All Black line and going well. Kieran Sheahan, Kerry versus Dublin shouldn't mask football's room for improvement. how Andy Farrell is spreading Ireland's leadership load. So it's one of those weeks where everybody's like, oh, there's lots of interesting stuff here because the sport is going well. Collins sets a new record. Dubliner to become the most expensive Irish player ever with 20 million move to Wolves. So this is Nathan Collins. Looks like the deal to Wolves is very close to being completed for 20.5 million, which obviously breaks the Robbie Keane record. Ronaldo has not told me he wants to leave, says Ten Hag. The Ten Hag thing is just playing it out, right? He's going, right?
It doesn't seem like it's a situation where Ten Hag is confident he's going to stay, but I would also kind of agree with what Daniel said earlier on. You've got to have the right suitor for him, and it looks like there's only a very small coterie of clubs who could afford him that are going to be playing Champions League football. Like it is Chelsea or Bayern Munich, really, isn't it?
I mean, Barcelona
are not going to...
Milan. Well, if they don't get Lewandowski.
With what money?
What do you mean, what money? The money doesn't matter.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
how are they getting Lewandowski?
Does Cristiano Ronaldo not look at the Frankie de Jong situation and say his wages have been deferred for so long, I'm not going to a club that's going to defer my wages?
Try for Ireland, 15-5 they lead. Nick Timoney with the try, and we're doing really well there. Ten Hag, Ronaldo will stay, but that's what you say, isn't it? You say he's staying, and then it's like, ha ha ha. No?
Like, I do think you need to give a positive sign, because there is a chance that he stays, and you don't want to be the guy who's saying he's going to leave and we don't need him, whatever, we're going to be fine without him, and then he's actually part of your squad next season. So you absolutely do have to give the positive message. But like, I don't think there's been much of any contact between them, certainly no face-to-face meetings between Ten Hag and Ronaldo, and obviously not involved in the training sessions at the moment. Ten Hag strikes me as the type of guy who would like to have his squad in order early in pre-season, like now, already, yesterday he wanted all his business done. I know there are a lot of factors out of Manchester United's control, but this is not an ideal summer. I do think that in 12 months' time we'll be talking about Manchester United's rebuilds as, you know, okay, now it's getting places and you can look forward to next season. Unless Ten Hag really is an absolutely wonderful manager and his three predecessors are all absolutely disgraceful, and that dressing room is actually a lot better than they performed over the last couple of years.
It's possible that some of those players are really good, high quality international footballers who have not been trying leg, and now they're going to try leg. Right?
It's not outlandish to think that, but the evidence would also suggest that it's not strong enough, the squad itself, and what they've done so far in the transfer window is not going to make them strong enough next season, you would think. But then again, there is that possibility that Ten Hag is a genius.
At its best, Gaelic football is a glory. This is Kevin McStay's piece, and there's another picture of Sean O'Shea booting the ball. You read this?
Yeah, good column. It seems a lot of people kind of lauding the game and kind of like just basking in the afterglow.
He thinks Shawnee should have been booked at least for the boot to the face.
Yeah, and then he got a yellow card in the second half, which would have meant he would have been on the pitch.
Well, he might not have got the yellow card if he's already booked. You have to assume that he won't do the thing, right?
Well, that's it.
Mitigates his...
Clifford gets an early booking and then he pulls out of a couple of tackles as the game goes on because he
Clifford's early booking, that was like, you know, that could easily have been a red. That was high.
No, it was an absolute
stereotypical clothesline.
It was a stereotypical yellow card. Like
it's true. We haven't got to the point yet where head and neck injuries in Gaelic games is meriting a red.
No, it's like you
will though.
You go, presumably. Well, we got to the point where shoulder to head is red.
Kind of. Sometimes
the lazy arm, which is kind of left behind and your man kind of runs through it, that is a yellow card.
Yeah, okay. Paddy Deegan is in all the papers. He was obviously put forward for the print media. He was one of 8 players who were in the Kilkenny squad defeated by Westmeath under 21s. Remember, this was like a big scandal, but like it turned out. I'm going to potentially butcher this, but was JJ Delaney on one of those under 21 teams that didn't win All Ireland as well? That sometimes James O'Donoghue was saying sometimes it's not great being a 17-year-old walking around thinking you are God's gift when you've just won a minor All Ireland. So
yeah, he was talking about the Offaly minors, wasn't he? And the heartbreaking defeat that it might actually be good for them in the long run.
Yeah.
O'Donoghue obviously speaking from a team that was absolutely terrible at under 21 level, got hockeyed by Cork as well. So that is interesting. What I can't get over is just the volume of them. Well, what it usually is a case where it's like one player came through the team that got hockeyed by Westmeath, not by Drew Westmeath or whatever it was, and it's a miracle that they did that. I think it's like 8 in the squad, so it's remarkable that there's that volume of players that have actually come from that one team into this current team.
Yeah, it's Ron for keeps. Ten Hag warns United Aces going nowhere, and Rory's got a canny plan. Rory McIlroy has warned the old course at St Andrews is vulnerable to a birdie barrage from the world's top players. So McIlroy's, last week he was saying maybe we all need to sit down with Live Golf, and now he's like, there's no place for Live Golf. If they would just go away, I'd be happy. So he's unleashing hell and using his platform. And then PGA faces probe into Rebels ban. So the US Department of Justice is not quite convinced that they're actually allowed to say you can't play golf because you're playing for these other people. Anti-American, anti-competitive.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could. I suppose their argument would be that Live Golf is anti-American, right?
No, that's Live Golf is rich. That's the American dream right there.
Capitalistic. That's the big paradox we have in sport at the moment.
Green and gold. Ireland hero Colin set for 24 million move to Wolves. Chiefs must box clever. Irish boxing chiefs have been given 2 months to come up with a governance plan in the wake of the massive vote against change from clubs. So boxing seems to be just ungovernable. Blue is the colour. Lewandowski to Chelsea. Chelsea join race for Lewandowski as Barca struggle to stump up 42 million. Would he work better? He might work better, would he?
Well, like it does seem that Chelsea is an absolute gift for gossip columns, isn't it? Because Todd Bowley obviously looks like the sort of guy who would buy anybody and would happily buy anybody. So you can just safely report if a footballer is good and famous, Chelsea's owner would like to sign them. So it's probably all accurate reporting.
Would he work with the Chelsea team the way it is?
I think so, but then again, we said the same thing about them, needing a number 9 in last season, and they get Lukaku. Now Lukaku, obviously, there's probably a different.
Where's Sterling going to play?
Sterling's going to play on the left.
Is he?
You think he could play through the middle?
I don't know. Maybe.
I think they would like Sterling to become what Hazard was for Chelsea before he left for Real Madrid. Like it's just really interesting the amount of different options that they have in those attacking positions, and who's going to be your centre forward. Maybe they just develop into a sort of Pep-esque team of last season where they don't have that centre forward, and that'll be an interesting storyline in the coming season as well as how Haaland fits into the Pep Guardiola philosophy, because he seems to have been pretty happy that they didn't have an out and out striker in Aguero's dying days and after he departed.
Colm Keys has done his best frees of the last 40 years.
Oh yeah.
Sean O'Shea, obviously. Cluxton against Kerry in the 2011 All-Ireland final. He's got Ross Carr from the 1991 semi-final from 55 yards.
Wow.
That's Down versus Derry. Obviously they go on to win the All-Ireland. That gets a replay. And that's them on the route to their first All-Ireland in 23 years. Rian O'Neill, which, do we forget about Rian O'Neill now? Like, that was...
Is it unbelievable?
Yeah. Is it... which was more distant?
I don't know. Obviously, Rian O'Neill's was at a different angle. I think Sean O'Shea's was further out the pitch, but maybe with the angle, Rian O'Neill's could have been just as far, if not further.
And into the canal end.
The thing with O'Neill's as well is that obviously they lose the game on the day. Like, at least if you win the game on the day and you lose it at a later point in the season, it's kind of remembered as a joyous moment. And I do think that being part of a losing effort, your score gets less memorable.
Are you freaked out at all by Team of Destiny, Galway, coming through a penalty shootout? Galway first team to win an All-Ireland through the back door. Galway first team to win an All-Ireland, having come through a penalty shootout?
No, I'm not freaked
out by that?
You don't need to be freaked out by Galway. You just need to watch them last week and say that they are a team that was very, very capable of winning the All-Ireland.
Derry kicked a lot of bad wides.
They did, but I'm just really impressed with how Galway set up and kind of managed to just not rope it up Derry, but it looked like Derry had the game on their own terms until all of a sudden they didn't, and when they didn't, they got pulled asunder by a team that I think myself included, have written off quite a lot all season. I didn't see Galway making it to the All-Ireland final at the start of the year.
No.
But they're there now, and they've beaten some really good teams on the way to get there, and they've got a hell of a chance on Sunday week.
Half-time, Ireland leading by 17 points to 5, and it's been an excellent performance against the Māori All Blacks this morning. Conceded an early try, but have largely controlled the game ever since. So the other ones, Dean Rock versus Mayo, GPS, Rob Henley, Mayo versus Dublin, the retake. There's a Derek Duggan free from 1991, which is about 60 yards as well.
91, clearly the year for frees.
On the ground. Peter Canavan, the Muggsy Canavan chat.
Oh yeah.
Muggsy laughing. It's against Kerry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's against Armagh.
05.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tightness of the angle. The fact that it's to win the game.
Yeah.
The fact that they win the All-Ireland. It's right there.
So that's in the Ulster, one of the Ulster games, right?
I think it's a semi-final.
Semi-final. Sorry, yeah, they meet each other again later on. Yeah, that's got to be up there.
I think they played 3 times that year.
They did, yeah, and in Croke Park.
The 3 times.
Yeah.
So the first game was a draw. The replay, Armagh win, which is the Ulster title.
Yeah, and then Tyrone get him back in the semi-final.
Win the match that matters.
Yeah.
Oof. And he that's the free to do it. And they were the 2 best teams in the country at that stage. We all know that. How did they get on the final there that year, 2005? What happened?
It was good that they did manage to pick up a couple of All-Irelands, like in second place in the Roll of Honour of the 2000s. It's nice for them.
3 All-Irelands. Big carry every year, did they?
3, and I mean, it would have been nice if they got to 4. Doing a back-to-back would have been class.
Right, yeah, okay. Then there's a couple of other ones. Brian Stafford, 91, again. Donny Shine from Roscommon Sligo. Is that the minor game, or is that... no. And then Larry Tompkins has one too. So you can read that list yourself. But look, anyway... there we go. Kieran Frawley's playing so well, he's going to be taken off at half time in order to be on the bench for Saturday. I mean, I don't know. Do it? No, can't do that. Right, that's the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be. No, I'm not having that. No.
Right, it's 8:50. Lee Keegan is with us. Lee, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good. I mentioned the GPS free there. You must have been very, very impressed by what Comerford was doing at the weekend. It was shithousery on a level that we hadn't seen since you threw that GPS.
Yeah, he was involved in a couple of incidents over the weekend. So he was setting a different trend from back in 17. So fair play to him.
Here's the thing, right? Everybody afterwards was saying, it was played in a great spirit. But I think if Dublin had won that match, there'd be a much bigger focus from particularly my Kerry friends here on the 10 minutes in the sin bin where actually the ball was in play for about a minute and a half, it felt like.
Yeah, definitely. And
the penalty.
The goal camera doesn't help Comerford in any way or shape. The fact that we've all seen it after the game. So... do you know what? It's part of the game, though. All the top teams do it, Ger, to be honest. It's not nice, but I mean, in the context of that game, I suppose Dublin were probably hanging on at that stage. It was early in the game, but I felt like the penalty was nearly like a wake-up call for them. And, probably fair dues to Comfort, not obviously the right thing to be at in terms of the context of sport and what it's like. But, I mean, it killed time for Dublin to get themselves kind of reassessed. And as a result, they kind of grew into the game and they kind of died with their roots on, to be honest. It just seemed to ignite them after that penalty miss, to be honest. And it felt if the penalty went in from Sheahan, actually the game felt over at that stage. I just didn't see a way back because the momentum was with Kerry. But Comfort definitely played. He played plenty of time on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the melee, the minor melee afterwards, where it just felt like he was operating at a level where he knew exactly what he needed to do for his team. Which, to be honest, in the last 5 minutes of the game, it seemed to desert Dublin a little bit. Like when they kicked the equaliser, I expected them to do pretty much what they did to you guys, which was like wrestle everybody to the ground to make sure that there's nothing here except maybe the goalkeeper has to go long again. And
it's pretty obvious why they didn't do that, because Dublin felt they could get that kick out and they felt they could go and win the game from there. If they were a point up, they would have done that.
But they didn't do a good job of trying to get it back.
Or did Kerry just do a good job of getting it out? Maybe.
Well, both. Yeah, I'm interested in what you think of that, Lee, because it felt like not that they switched off, but that they didn't manage that last minute and a half of the game as well as you might have expected them to.
No, and that's probably been something that's it's been associated with Dublin over the previous years, especially during the time we played them in regular games, that Dublin's kind of game management, that was their biggest asset they had, and especially against the top teams, in particular against ourselves in finals and semis, that just knew how to run in that clock. And I suppose that incident happened maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't be discussing about Dublin not stopping that. Dublin would have stopped that and the game would have been over nearly. But it just feels like since kind of the old guard have left Dublin and the new guard have come in, they don't seem to kind of recognise that. Albeit they still have James McCarthy, Kieran Kenny, Brian Fenton, who've been part of those teams, but the newer generation probably are not as clued into what the older guys did before in terms of game management, killing the game. And probably even if you compare Dublin from previous years to even this year, like their shots, the shot conversion was very low at the last day, and even some of their turnovers that you wouldn't associate Dublin with. And that's kind of the difference probably from the Dublin greats to the Dublin team now. And listen, just all things aside, I suppose you have to still give credit to Dublin. I mean, that game could have slipped away easily and they could have just, let that game run out. But it's just a sign of a great team. And you have the likes of James McCarthy in particular and Kieran Kelly. You just couldn't ask for any more of those guys. I mean, they've done it all in the game. They've won everything. It could have been just an easy thing for them to say, you know what, the game is over. But the boys stuck to their guns and they put in one of the best shifts I've seen in a long time in Dublin forwards.
The second half of that game on Sunday was mad, and the game lost all shape. Kerry lost complete structure if they had one in that second half. Like, the closest kind of thing I can remember is your final against the Dubs in 17. Maybe after you score that goal into the hill, just the place absolutely hopping. You just don't know what's going to happen next. What is it like in that moment, Lee, when you realise that the whole game has fallen to pieces and that there is no structure to it anymore?
I think, to be honest, Colin Boyle texted me actually just for the game. He said this game is going to be absolute madness, carnage. And I suppose the first half always takes a bit of shape and context, but the second half, I don't know, you couldn't write it, to be honest, because there's bodies everywhere. Like Kerry, I never seen so many boys go down with cramp or injuries, and I don't know who was marking who, and it was just madness altogether. And I think that's the thing with these big games, especially in the semi-final, and we ourselves know it particularly more than most, is that sometimes it's within the madness sometimes is where games are won. And to be fair, it probably will be a good thing for Kerry that it happened now rather than the final, I think, because now they've got that out of their system, that madness, that whole carnage around beating Dublin for so long. So I think that's a huge positive for them. But a game like that just takes on a life of its own. It really does. I mean, in the mix of Croke Park in the semi-final, and there's 20 minutes go, and to be honest, you don't know what's going to happen. And I'd say it's the same playing out there as well. Sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, if you banked on James McCarthy near that point, it would tend to go. I mean, that was just absolutely crazy stuff. Like, I mean, that was outrageous game. Like, I mean, take on that shot as well. I mean, I never seen a cleaner strike, and that added to the more carnage game, because once he got that, like, momentum was shifted completely back to Dublin, and like I would have backed Dublin all day to win that game from that point onwards. So I mean, you have to give credit to him, but then again, listen, Kerry won the game, and that's what it's all about. Semi-finals are there for winning, and I think Jack O'Connor made a very good point there after the game. He goes, "We're going to the final. No one's going to remember the semi-final if we don't go on and be going in the final." So I think that's the biggest key factor for Kerry now, is how quickly can they get back grounded, get back training, get back into their own bubble, and listen, take the negatives, take the positives from Sunday, because there's loads of them. There is really, they were hanging on towards the end. It probably should have got to the point where it came down to last minute free. If Kerry were really on song for that game, they could have walked that game at times, but because they let Dublin get back into it and let Dublin dictate what they want to do, I think that's going to be a big focus now for Kerry going into the Galway game in 2 weeks' time.
So the last 3 times Dublin have been beaten in the championship, the team that beat them went on to lose the final. Obviously yourselves in 2 occasions, and in the middle Donegal in 2014. Off that high they get done in the final. Even just from last year, Lee, because I guess beating Dublin was just such a huge moment for everybody in the country to see them beaten. Is that a real thing going into the final, trying to come off that? And I think was it a 2-week gap as well last year? Like, I feel it was the same gap, or maybe a little bit longer. But
I think we 3 last year. It was based on Tyrone and at the game, and Tyrone Kerry took an extra week with COVID and bits and pieces like that. So, but it's a weird one, because we got grounded pretty quick after the Dublin game. To be honest, like, it wasn't a big thing of a celebration. I think we had a couple of quiet drinks that night together as a group, and we were back kind of training on the Tuesday. So it was very much sole focus on. Like, I suppose we didn't know at that stage. The following week was kind of just we get recovery and get back to our training facility and stuff like that. But once Tyrone came around, there was no more talk with them, to be brutally honest. I think there was more talk probably media wise than there was in our group. And once we knew it was Tyrone, that was the focus, to be totally honest with you. But obviously, listen, beat Dublin Championship in a big game is huge for any team. But I suppose from my own experience, and even particularly last year, and it was kind of fresh still, it was Tyrone. That's all we focused on. Didn't matter. Like, we're talking about Dublin and Tyrone, two totally different teams, how they set up, how they play, different matchups. So for us, it was just trying to get into that mindset of we're going to play a really tough Ulster team, and unfortunately, we just didn't do enough to do that. So, I mean, Kerry might learn from that from last year ourselves, but I don't know what the learning is, because I just think we just got beaten by other team on the day, to be totally honest. So, but I do think there's something a bit different with this Kerry team. They're on the road since 18 now. I think. A lot of people talk about the young ones there, but like, you gotta realise Clifford and O'Shea, these boys are 5 years into their senior championship career or senior career. Like, so I mean, I think probably that's a huge stepping stone that the last day against Sunday to beat Dublin. But I think the biggest thing for Kerry now is how quickly can they get grounded. I think with someone like Jack Connor taking over them, I think he'll get the best out of this week now. I mean, there's not going to be much to be done for the final. Like this week is going to be recovery, get the injuries sorted, literally do a couple of days analysis, and that's really it. So I mean, Jack's a smart man. I mean, he knows the game better than most, so he'll have Kerry crying for 2 weeks' time, and it won't be a concern, I don't think, this Dublin game.
Gavin White looked like he was injured.
That doesn't look good.
Yeah,
doesn't look good. Yeah.
Do they have enough strength and depth? Are they strong enough in the half back line to be able to create like they might need to do against a Galway team who, from the semi-final and from what they've done, will probably be very happy to sit in with lots of bodies, certainly in that first 15, 20, 25, 35 minutes?
I suppose, like, a lot of talk on Kerry is they're probably attacking kind of bench options. I think it's probably, like, Gavin White's a huge loss. I mean, now, I thought he probably was in out of the game the last bit. I suppose in the goal didn't go in for himself, and then the penalty miss, he didn't probably have one of his better games. But in terms of, I mean, his leadership for Kerry, I think he's going to be a huge loss. And the reason he will be as well is that he's one of the probably young guys I can see run as quick as the likes of Jack McCaffrey or Shane Welsh. So to break that line, especially a goal to set up, I think that's going to be a huge loss for Kerry. And how to replace that, I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't think it'll matter from a defensive context point of view because, as you said, Galway set up with massive numbers behind the ball. So I don't think that's going to hinder it defensively. But I think more from an attacking platform from deep, Gavin White brings so much positivity to the Kerry attack from deep. And even if he makes a run, he might get the ball, but he creates space with like Clifford, Shawley, Stephen O'Brien. So, I mean, he's going to be a huge loss. But that's probably the biggest thing. Just looking at the goal again the last day was, like, Galway are very happy to stick to that game plan for the full 70 minutes. They might tweak a little bit with Kerry, might go a bit more at them, but they're very comfortable dropping big numbers back and leaving 1 or 2 up top. So I think, based on what Kerry was saying last day, they should set up right for that. But it's going to be a hard game to call, to be honest. I kind of listened to their own. Galway are kind of, no one probably tipped Galway to be this far, but they'll see this as a one-off game. All the talk about Kerry now going into 2 weeks' time. So I mean, Paul Joyce again has been there. He knows the routine. So he'll have them prime now for 2 weeks' time, regardless if Gavin White's playing or not, to be honest, which he probably won't be.
Do you think they've got better since the kind of championship game that you lost to them?
To be honest, it's very hard to know because, like, if you take Galway in the first half against Derry, I honestly feel if that was Dublin or Kerry last day, that game wouldn't even got past half time. So that's probably the biggest worry for Galway. They looked very nervy in that first half, to be honest. And to be honest, once they got ahead Derry, I did feel Galway were going to win the last day against Derry. I just think they have too much flair up top, too much quality, like Shane Welch, Comer, Killian McGlynn, these boys. I just think they have a better attacking unit. So I was worried after 10 minutes. I thought, look at Derry, if they get ahead at all, they're very good at killing the game. But to fair to Galway, when they came out after half time, I do think that 45 was huge for Galway going into half time because they played so poorly. And the fact that was a big momentum changer, even for Shane Welsh, he was out of the game completely in the first half, and Ewan Kluski did a fantastic job throughout the game. But even Welsh's demeanour coming out after half time was totally different. Took those 3 frees, looked like a new man. So I think they probably have, you can't write off Galway anyway because they've beaten 2 really top quality Ulster teams. So I mean that's not easy done, and they're fully unmerited in all their fight because they've beaten a good Armagh team who were hotly tipped to be Galway. And they beat a Derry team who were ranked really high after a big win against Clare and they're also campaigning. So Galway will be full of confidence, to be honest, with this game. And they seem to have a clean bit of health as well going into it. And a lot of their big guys are playing good football. Damien Comer's hit the right notes at the right time. He's going to take a lot of mind in. Shane Welch can definitely improve more, which I think he is going for the final. Rob Brindley was quiet the last day, a guy I identified as a big guy for them, but he'll have to step up for the final. So I think Galway will be really excited for this game. Like I said, and the extra 24 hours watching the Dublin Kerry game, they have a lot going into that final. So I mean, they're not going to fear. And as I said, when you beat 2 good sides, I mean, you should be full of confidence as well.
Is there anything in that second half that Kerry can point to as an explainer for what happened from a game that they had largely control of, particularly in the second quarter of the first half, that they can fix in advance of an All-Ireland final? Or do they just have to accept that at some point Galway are going to have a purple patch and just ride it out, hope they don't score enough, and we try and outscore them?
Yeah, I think if it gets into a game like that, I just think Kerry are too good. So if you're going to shoot out, you can't leave Clifford and Sean Shane, these boys, in open space and go to a shootout. So absolutely, Galway are going to get per patch in this game. It just how good Kerry, and we've seen how good Kerry are defensively. I mean, conceding 113 last day is not bad, to be honest. 14 scores. If you're conceding that, you're going to win most games anyway. And with Kerry's attacking unit, they're going to score more than 14 scores anyway. So I mean, that would be a positive. My biggest concern about Kerry is the structure. As Owen mentioned earlier, like it got to pandemonium stages in the second half, and probably haven't associated that Kerry up to that game now. They've been very structured, very solid, and kept very rigid to their game plan. So, and my other probably worry a bit for Kerry was the amount of energy they expanded in that first half to try and take on Dublin, and I really think it impacted them in the second half. It could have been the heat. I don't know. But a lot of their guys looked dead in their feet halfway through that second half. And again, Galway identified that, and the way their running game is going at the moment, that could be a huge area of concern for Jack going into the final. So I mean, a lot of guys expanded huge amount of energy, and even the likes of Clifford and Sean Shea, who had massive first halves, went out the game second half completely. So Galway see that again as a huge positive for themselves to take out. So if they can negate those two lads in the second half, albeit Paddy Clifford came really good in the second half, I think it's a huge focus for Kerry going in, but it will also be a big focus for Galway. Can they run the legs of these boys in the second half after what they've seen against Dublin? Now it's going to take a massive effort, don't get me wrong. The Dublin-Kerry game was high intensity, took a lot of effort, but I mean, it's probably a concern for Jack that how many lads lost structure, but also how many guys went down kind of cramp and fatigue early enough in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Like the one thing is that in the middle of all that pandemonium, as you say, Kerry were still really good defensively. Like some of the turnovers were really impressive. Like the Costello goal was before the pandemonium set in. Like they didn't crumble at the back. It was just, they were just so disjointed in attack.
Yeah, and that's something I suppose probably even we identified with Kerry over the years up till now was if you can get a bit ahead of Kerry at all, and even that goal, and Jim McCarthy's pointed out earlier, I would have seen that as a huge plus for the team attacking Kerry, because we've seen Kerry in the year before, even against Tyrone last year, that come in that stretch and you're still within the game, you'd feel pretty confident you're going to take these boys. Where I feel this year, even ourselves in the third quarter, we got to a point what killed us was probably the few wides and drop short balls, but even looking at Kerry, they never really panicked. They tagged on the next 4 or 5 scores after that, and they just looked pretty comfortable. So even defensively, it was always probably one of our big game plans is to take these boys on. Now they look really, really solid, and that's huge credit to Paddy Talley and the way he's them set up. But they actually look really confident as defenders now at the moment, because they're working hard for each other. It's not a thing where it's man on man. They're actually trusting that system. So one guy gets beat, there's another guy backing them up. So I think that's huge confidence and huge applause that's go to the likes of Paddy Talley that he's done that job with them, and that's a huge transformation from last year. What they conceded goals compared to now, I think it's something like 7 last year. They've only conceded 1 in championship this year, so that speaks volumes with their offensive plan already. So yeah, so I mean, it's going to make for good reading in 2 weeks. Can the Galway attack take that on?
Look, it'll be very interesting to see. One last thing, right? Hawkeye, I don't know. Do we feel confident that they switch it back on for the hurling this week and it goes fine, that's it and we're back, or is it just like, look, well, let's take the off season to see what's going on and make sure that the pointy-headed boffins at the company come back and prove that it's accurate?
Someone said in the video last day, it's Hawkeye is like human, makes more mistakes than anything else. So I mean, it doesn't really give you much confidence that that's coming out. And to be honest, it's crazy. Like this day and age that we don't have technology at the elite sports level that can be trusted. I mean, it's a very simple concept. If the ball goes over the bar, it gives a score. Like I mean, I think Conor Glass had one. Suppose he went over the bar as well, and Hawkeye gave it off, and it looked good for our angle in the studio last day. Like so, I mean. It doesn't bode well for our games, and it looked messy even at half time. All the officials are talking about this, and even for ourselves, it's all we talked about half time. We weren't talking about the game, right? There was all Hawkeye, so it's taken away from the games and the spectacle. Albeit the spectacle wasn't so good in the first half of the Derry Galway game, but still, it shouldn't be the hot topic conversation that we're talking about Hawkeye again. I mean, it's come up a few times over the last few years. It's going to be have to look at. So if I were the hurling bosses going into the game, I wouldn't have a lot of faith in it, to be honest. If they couldn't give a score for a bigger ball, how are they going to handle a smaller ball? That would be my worry. So it's a bit mad. I don't, to be honest, like one of Sean O'Shea's point last day had drifted a bit over the post, and we know Hawkeye what was going to happen in that case. Do you know? So these are the big questions we're going to have to ask. Is it fit for purpose? I'm not sure at the moment. They're going to have to review that in depth, because it's not really good enough in this day and age that we can't trust a system that's meant to help our sports and help dictate games.
Yeah, 100%. Lee, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Take care.
It's always interesting stuff from Lee Keegan there this morning at 9:09. Ireland have kicked another penalty. Kieran Frawley definitely doing his future prospects no harm here.
I mean, he's been the winner of this tour so far.
Ireland are on 20 points. The Māori All Blacks are on 5. The referee's gone for something here, so maybe there's going to be another card. It's 45 minutes gone, but Ireland have put in an excellent performance so far. You wouldn't say it's game over at all. There's definitely been plenty of opportunities for the Māori All Blacks, but they've been knocking balls on when, it's going to be a yellow card for Larmour tackling without the ball. It could be a penalty try. Be interesting to see if they give it. I mean, they tend not to give these in New Zealand. So Larmour has tackled the New Zealand player without the ball, who then drops it.
Did he have the ball in his hands just as he tackled him?
I don't know. The angle's not good enough. No, he's tackling without the ball. It's at least a yellow and potentially remember, do they have to give the penalty try now because they didn't at the weekend?
Well, no, they didn't give the penalty try to Ireland, so Ireland get the rub of green this time.
But you do it twice. No, you don't get the rub of the green. We sacrifice for the greater good of the game.
Oh, sorry,
of course. The route has now been applied because the team in black is the ones who are benefiting.
Well, if Ireland don't win on Saturday, at least we can have that consolation from the entire tour as a whole.
Okay, all right. OTB AM brought to you live every morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Barry Ryan's book, The Ascent. We've got Koi Gig, a Euro special at 3. Our career retrospective is Maddie Holland at 4. And OTB Gold, Life and Times of Johnny Kilbane at 6. Johnny Kilbane's a boxer from Achill, who left Achill as like a 1-year-old and then went off to Cleveland and became the greatest boxer in history. In the 19-teens, he was like the longest uninterrupted world champion at any stage in boxing history. So that is a yellow card for Jordan Larmour, who has been very good in the game up to this point. I don't know, maybe he could let him get possession. Maybe it was a brilliant professional foul, and we'll see. But let's wait and see how the Māori All Blacks go by his direct opponent. But Ireland got a penalty the other way. I missed that bit. How was that not just a...
It was a penalty try.
It was a penalty try.
Yeah, it was.
They gave the penalty try.
Yeah, penalty try and a yellow card.
I missed that bit. So it's 20 points to 12. Right. I mean, how is that a penalty try? There's like loads of cover. Wow.
Well, no. I think the penalty try should have been awarded last week.
And this week.
I think it's a penalty try in both cases, isn't it?
I mean, it's certainly...
the ring rose thing was a more certain... Well, to be fair, the ball wasn't passed. I know you were probably through this yesterday. The ball wasn't in Ring Rose's arms, whereas this Māori All Black gentleman had the ball in his arms.
There you go. Wow. Follow Off the Ball across all our social channels. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the latest and best in sports content and analysis. Are Ger Eoin wearing matching shirts on purpose?
Yes.
Stephen Mack. Yeah, we colour coordinated this morning just to make sure that we are simpatico. After the break, we're live with the former Shelbourne defender Seana Cooke, who's going to give us the very latest on the Women's European Championships. First, the lads in last night's news round discussed how Kerry could become a dominant team in football again. This is what's going to happen. 4 out of the next 5. 5 out of the next 6.
Conversations before an All-Ireland final, that always ends well.
Yeah. You're like, it's all set up for a long period of dominance. It couldn't be better. Your 2 best players are 24, 23, turning 24.
Like, there was kind of like their careers were flashing before my eyes midway through the second half on Sunday, whereas like these guys are not going to get the medals they deserve because it would have set them back so much. A final defeat would still set them back that much. Having this conversation before the final,
no,
bad idea.
No, they're winners. Clifford in the first half was one of the all-time great sports performances that I've ever been in the stadium for.
Were you at it?
It was sensational. Yeah.
All right, I didn't realise you were at it.
Yeah, totally. Like one of the points he scores looked exactly like one of the goals he scored as a kid. Do you remember the goal that he kind of dribbles around, where he's like Zlatan for Ajax in that pre-season friendly all those years ago? And the goal that he scores, it looked like he was going to go for the goal, but he didn't. He just chips the point, having weaved his way around 4 of them in the space of about 5 yards.
Yeah, he hasn't gone for like a 30-yard screamer at any point this season. Jack's told him not to go for it, I suspect.
No, it's coming.
Sean O'Shea could also have fisted the ball over the bar before his goal, which I thought was going to happen, and I was like, how did he get in for that? So
right, but you've got to be excited.
Of course you're excited about a team in an All-Ireland final and with a lot of youth on its side. It's unbelievably exciting, but talks about dominance can't happen until you have won All-Ireland, in my opinion. And
one last point before you go. If Dublin got that free at the end to win the game, there would have been absolute uproar by 31 other counties in the media.
This is the Dublin victim complex has been laid bare for everyone to see this week, as if Dublin haven't been rightly lauded over the past few years. I don't understand it. Maybe it's just getting used to the fact that they're not winning anymore. Maybe that's part of the whole victim complex, that the universe must be against you if you're not in the winner's enclosure.
There you go. Back after these.
there's a couple of nuances. It wasn't a classic game by any means. It was more akin to the 2011 and 2015 All-Ireland finals rather than the 2013 and 2016 All-Ireland semi-finals. So it won't go down in the annals of the greatest games, but it certainly was one of the greatest finishes. And in some ways, it was a bit of a shot to nothing for him. I would have been very interested to see how he would have delivered that strike had it been to send the game to extra time. So in other words, if Kerry don't score that free, they're out. Obviously, all of the pressure is on him then. Nobody expected him to score that. I thought it was outside his range, but the ball was still travelling when it went over the crossbar. I mean, had it been another 15 metres out, he probably still would have nailed it. It was just such a strike of purity and precision, and the timing that is required. It didn't even look like he was really straining. It was just his usual style. I'd say he felt very little pressure because of the stakes were a little lower than that. He knew Kerry would go to extra time if he'd missed it. But then at the same time, they'd surrendered a 6-point lead against a team that have had their number for the last 10 years. And it would have been another situation in which this group of Kerry players were struggling to get over the line. In the end, they fell over the line. I think this would have set them back years had they lost that game yesterday from the position they were in. And I suspect, and I'd say Dublin fans fear this might be the case, in 10 years' time, we will look back on that Sean O'Shea free as Kerry's Cluxton moment, the catalyst for several years of sustained success, because I think they've got a severe monkey off their back now, having beaten their nemesis and come through real adversity in that last quarter of the game, and it will really stand to them now because they've lost all the really big games they've played in the last 3 years. They lost to Cork in 2020, they lost that replay in 2019, they couldn't get out of the group stage of the Super 8s in 2018, lost to Tyrone in their first real test last season. It's a Kerry team that just don't win the big games, and they haven't shown that they can take the pressure when it's at its highest until they fell over that line yesterday. And under Jack O'Connor, I suspect this is going to bring them on an awful long way. And that could be the turning point for this group of Kerry players. The vast majority of their superstar players, their top players, are in their early to mid-20s. So, I mean, these are the peak years ahead of them.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
If you had to pick a greatest British footballer of all time, or even since Bobby Charlton, would you go along the Gareth Bale lines or have another pick?
I think Kenny Dalglish should be pretty upset by that. If you want to say, is he the greatest since Dalglish? There's an argument for it. He won, 3 European Cups with him. His link up with Rush was, but I mean, Rush has got an argument there as well. I mean, Rush was I think we don't realise now how good Rush was.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It is 20 points to 12, Ireland leading the Māori All Blacks, and we've got another 3.5 minutes, I think, of a player in the bin, Jordan Larmour, who conceded a penalty try to bring the Māori All Blacks right back into the game. So it's an 8-point lead for Ireland. There's 51 minutes on the clock, or is that a 6? The picture's not great. Is it 61 minutes or 51 minutes gone? I'll just get an update on that for you. We'll have full-time analysis from Keith Wood at around about 10 o'clock this morning. You'll need to click on the news stream for that, but we'll send a push notification to your app if you have the app and let you know what the crack is with that. In the meantime, we're talking about the Euros. England annihilated Norway last night. I'm delighted to say Seana Cooke is with us. Good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hey, how are you?
England's performance last night was probably not unexpected in terms of them being very good, but the absolute margin of victory sets a record for them in the Euros and sends a signal out to the rest of Europe that this team is the favourites for the competition. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think after their first game, they looked a little bit edgy, which was expected. I mean, big crowd, first game after, a huge marketing campaign and all eyes on them. And I think they had to come into this game and really settle down, or they'd kind of be left wide open for other teams for a few shots at them. But I just thought the first minute that they looked like they wanted to draw blood, and they were willing to kind of say to Norway, we're going to keep going for 90 plus minutes and not stop. And I mean, the penalty obviously was never a penalty, but it set the tone for the game, because once they scored that, then it was, the gates were wide open. And yeah, for me, it was a really big shock. I thought England might pip the game, but I didn't think it'd be by that scoreline.
So Norway are pretty good. Like, I think everybody expected a tight game, a proper test for England. Why did they fall apart?
Well, I mean, this goes back to the Euro 2017. They had an absolute abysmal tournament in 2017. They were pretty much one of the favourites. They lost the 3 group games, and after that there was kind of a whole, I suppose, that they come out to talk to the media about how they were going to, really put things right, how they were going to go from strength to strength, and it was under the same manager. So there was an expectation that just wouldn't happen again after 2017. And then this time around, the players that they have, like the likes of Hegerberg, Engen, Caroline Graham Hansen, I think there was high expectation. But for me, England had this really good high press. They had Ellen White backed up by 4 players behind her, and they just weren't allowing Norway to play out. What surprised me most was kind of after the third goal, Thor's daughter, she'd made a few mistakes, and that's been her pattern even through the season with United. So I thought she'd be taken off at half time. I was expected to knock out after half time. But even after the third goal, there was nothing from the management or even those senior players on the pitch to go, do you know what, let's stop trying to play out back. Let's just, get a solid bank of 5 and 4 for a few minutes, see out this first half. But they kept trying to do the same thing over and over again, which I suppose is the method of insanity. So I just thought, they crumbled after the second goal, and there was no coming back from that.
Okay, so that's them, I presume, done in this tournament, and they're not going to be live candidates, because obviously they had a win already, so it's not impossible that they qualify and maybe, make some kind of recovery from this. But if you were to loosely give us a power ranking of who might stop England at this point, very early, very, very early doors for us to be talking like that, I know.
For me...
Go on, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it would either be at this point, the ones I could see stopping Germany are France or Germany.
And what about France and Germany have impressed you?
France, as everyone says, Wendy Reinhardt's France. She's a powerhouse at the back. There was a lot of controversy, the players they left out before the tournament, the likes of Henry, but the manager took some, I suppose, wild cards, and it's paid off. The football they play, they're really going for fluid football, and they've a really strong attack similar to England. So, and I think the battles between England and France are always there. And Germany, they're the most crowned team in this competition. They're physically strong. They dominate opposition. They're ruthless. The only thing for Germany is they've got a few COVID cases, so it's have they got the strength and depth? I think we'll see that this week.
It's interesting you talk about that group as well, because so obviously England are going to top their group at this stage, but it's the runners-up from the group between Germany and Spain who they'll play in the next round. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think that would potentially be either Spain or is the other one Sweden, I think. Is it?
I would have said, I thought, yeah.
No, sorry, Italy. It is, Italy, Iceland, is it? I think. Is it that group?
I'm actually not sure.
Finland, that's it. Yeah, Finland. So it'll be, the likely big two out of that group will be Germany and Spain.
All right. At this stage, I mean, obviously you're going to make England favourites. Beth Mead, I think, was one of your pre-tournament expectations to end up with the Golden Boot. She's come roaring back into the squad, maybe with a bit of a point to prove. And I don't know, this goes to a point that was made earlier on in the show. It looks like England have a competent, coherent management structure in place, and that might be one of the reasons why they were seeing such an improvement from them.
Yeah, definitely. Like Serena Wigmar, I mean, what she done with the Netherlands, a couple of years ago in the 2007 Euros. Come in 6 months before that tournament.
Oh, we've just lost our line to Seana Cooke there. It's 2012 to Ireland, 56 minutes gone at this stage. The Māori All Blacks had a good portion of pressure in the immediate aftermath of the penalty try that Ireland conceded, but they were unable to make it count and have just made a couple of handling errors which have given Ireland the opportunity to get back in the game and just ease a little bit of the pressure that they felt. So there's 56 minutes gone, Ireland leading the Māori All Blacks by 20 points to 12, and we're going to have full-time analysis and reaction from Keith Wood. I think we've got Seana Cooke back. Seana, good morning to you. You're back there. Sorry, we were just talking about the management structure that they have and how better it is now than it was when it was Phil Neville.
Yeah, definitely. The Seana has come in and she's really changed things around. She's. I think the word that's going around a lot of the England players are saying is she sets standards and she puts a level of organisation in place that they haven't seen before. The one thing I was impressed with was at the end of the game how she was telling them all to calm down, which is something we're not used to seeing with England. They tend to kind of run with things and start to get their head in the clouds very early. So I was very impressed with her after the game. She never gets too excited either.
I mean, like an England team winning a home tournament is obviously something that nearly happened recently enough for the men. But you can see how big and important it would be for the game in England. You know, there would be a knock-on impact for the WSL if England were to win this.
Yeah, 100%. Even, I mean, all the marketing and media attention that went into the tournament beforehand, like they were obviously lighting up landmarks with players on them. It was incredible. And it would be fantastic for the WSL. I think if England win the tournament, they'll just be our insufferable neighbours for a couple of years.
Speaking of neighbours, Northern Ireland, 2 games, 2 defeats. Is this pretty much the level that we expected them to be at, or should they have had slightly higher expectations?
No, I don't think so. It was their first tournament. I think Kenny Shields, kind of, in fairness to him, has set them up to play. He spoke about he didn't want them just to be a number in the competition. He wanted them to go out and give it a go. I think they can come away with their heads held high. They've tried to give it a go. They haven't just sat back and defended for 290 minutes. Their work rate has been impressive. There's been players standing out. The likes of Demi Vance has been playing really, really well. They just got a really difficult group, and that didn't help. But I'm sure they'll learn from this and bounce on from it. Okay.
Anything else stand out so far?
For me, I think Portugal would be a team to watch. They nearly caused an upset against Switzerland. They got the draw, which was unexpected, and I think they have it in their locker to cause an upset or two. So I'd recommend viewers to watch the Netherlands-Portugal game tomorrow evening at 8 p.m.
Okay, tonight the game between Germany and Spain also worth watching. That one also kicks off at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, definitely. 2 powerhouses, 2 very different styles, and I think the likes of Germany's Lena Magul and Spain's Bonatti are just brilliant players and really worth to watch.
Okay, you had a couple of other names apart from Beth Mead who you think are going to potentially be the golden boot. Leah Schuler?
Yeah, Schuler, yeah.
Yeah, and Caroline Graham-Hansen.
Yeah. I mean, I chose Caroline Graham-Hansen before last night. She's playing in the number 10 for Norway, which is something we haven't seen her playing before. She plays out wide left for Barcelona. But I think in the 10, she finds, before last night, she was finding a lot of space. So she's my wild card. And Schuler, I think she was the Bundesliga top goal scorer. I think she'll shine. The only thing is she's now out with COVID, so it's how quickly they can get her back into the squad. Right, okay, so that's probably going to end up ruling her out of that. And Beth Mead's got a bit of a head start now after that as well, so it'd be tricky for anybody to catch her. So your finalists at this stage, England, are we writing them in pen at the moment? Do we think they're going to go all the way to the final? Yeah, I think so. I just think from last night what they showed is they're ruthless. And even the players that they brought on, there was no lull in performance. Sometimes when a manager makes some changes, that can kind of impact the performance. But I think they're just looking too strong at the moment to drop out before the final.
And versus who in the final?
I'm going to go with Germany. And then I have France as a backup to say with the red faces I get. But I think Germany, they're a team that tends to, they don't peak too early. They go from strength to strength as the tournament goes on. And as I said, they're experienced. They're experienced nation in this competition. So the pressure is on that bunch of players from a German perspective to go and do the business. All
right, Seana, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Seana Cooke there giving us her thoughts on the Euros so far. We'll obviously keep you up to date with the rest of the tournament, and you've got to tune into Koigig, which you can get on the OTB football feed on our podcast network. You just subscribe to OTB Football and Koigig will arrive, though you could also just subscribe to the Koigig pod in its own feed as well. Now, a reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. What have we got coming up? Keith Wood's going to join us at 10 o'clock. It'll be on a different stream though, so if you're watching on YouTube, you need to get over to youtube.com/offtheball. We'll tweet the specific link to it if you want to join us live, and obviously we'll have the podcast up for you about 20 minutes after that. It is 20 points to 12. There's 61 minutes on the clock. The game's got a bit scrappy in the last few minutes. The conditions have meant that both teams are making handling errors, so a lot of scrums, a lot of scrum resets, and to be honest, that's suiting Ireland at the moment because we have an 8-point advantage with 19 minutes left to go on the clock at this point. Right, we'll be back tomorrow obviously with Tommy Walsh live in studio, and we'll be turning our attention to the final test for the weekend against New Zealand. As I said, Keith Wood's coming up after 10 o'clock with reaction, so we'll see you back here on a brand new stream at 10 o'clock. But for now, it's a bit of Monday Night Rugby. Enjoy.
Now then, so more reaction to New Zealand 12, Ireland 23 in Dunedin. A fourth win for Ireland against New Zealand, and of course a first on Kiwi soil. The Maoris tomorrow morning. Keith Earls will captain the side against the Maoris tomorrow morning, and then Wellington for Test 3 on Saturday. Very much looms large. Happy to say Matt Williams is with us. Hi, Matt.
G'day, Joe. How are you, mate?
I'm great. And Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent. Hello, Rory.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Matt.
So, Rory, 4 wins in 7. It's getting a bit easy against New Zealand.
Yeah, getting used to this. And it's, I think for Irish rugby, it's a pretty nice experience after all those years of hurt, Probably the most comfortable Ireland have been against New Zealand, down in part to their own excellence and in part to New Zealand's really, really, one of the worst New Zealand performances I've ever seen. And that, again, is in part down to the pressure that Ireland put them under. But it was, it was such an impressive... it had all reflected nearly all of the good things about Irish Rugby 9 and the team that Andy Farrell has assembled, the way they play, apart from maybe their composure in the 22. That's the one thing they were lacking, because they probably should have won this game far more comfortably. Everything else was right on point, and they I was questioning the team selection last week. They rewarded their coach who showed faith in them, and they did it in style as well. It was pretty impressive stuff.
Matt?
Absolutely. Todd Blackadder, the great All Black captain, said to me once that Test match rugby at its essence is a mental game. And I think the two Test matches show that. New Zealand mentally in the first Test were absolutely brilliant. Their performance in Eden Park was almost flawless as you can get in rugby. And the Irish mentality was just not right. They weren't ready for what New Zealand threw at them. And the second Test was almost a mirror image. New Zealand looked like they just expected to win, and I agree with Rory completely. I can't recall a poorer New Zealand performance, and much of that has to be given to the excellence of Ireland, who mentally were up for it. And there's no greater example than that than their defence. Their defence in the first Test was as poor as I've seen Ireland defend, and their defence in the second Test, which is 101 away from home, Joe. You've heard me say that 100 times. When you're on the road, you've got to have your D absolutely in order if you have any chance of winning. And they did. And their attack was also great. Their tactics were great. It was a comprehensive win on New Zealand soil like I have very, very rarely seen.
On the issue of defence, Matt, I saw Johnny Sexton was asked afterwards about improvements in the performance week 2 versus week 1. One of the things he mentioned was that Ireland transitioned very well from attack to defence when there was an error or a mistake or a turnover. We saw in Test 1 how deadly New Zealand are from turnover ball. aside from that, which Sexton did mention, just in general play, what was different about the Irish defence in Test 2?
Well, I think if I take you back to Test 1, Joe, what New Zealand were doing, their tactic was really simple. They used Aaron Smith, their halfbacks, phenomenal pass to get wide. So the forwards were running much, much wider than Ireland were anticipating. They were running about the fourth Irish defender on his outside shoulder. And then they would do the same, going back the same way, or again. And it was moving the Irish players laterally in the line. They had to adjust in the line. And they simply weren't coming forward. And all Ireland did, it sounds like all they did, I don't mean it like it was just nothing, but they didn't have to panic as much with their lines, their adjustment laterally, because they were going forward. And they went forward, they met the New Zealand defenders, they were very effective in their tackles, and they competed well at the breakdown, and they didn't allow New Zealand to do what they did in the first test. So, again, if you take time and space away from the offensive team as a defender, which is your goal, it's amazing how that comes behind you in your play. You tend to get that time and defence into your play that you take away from the opposition, which is exactly what New Zealand did the week before. It sounds so simple, and in some ways it is. But when you're playing the great New Zealand team in New Zealand, to do it and to wrest that momentum back, it's just unbelievably hard, Joe. And again, that comes back to their mindset. You know, their mindset gives you belief. Belief gives you that opportunity to perform. And if you get a good performance, that gives you the opportunity to win. So they changed their mindset, and they had a belief that they could do it. They simplified things down and just went about it with a lot more aggression and a lot more go forward in both attack and defence.
And for the second week in a row, Rory, hell of a start. I mean, Ireland led from the third minute in this game right the way through, and akin to the previous week, first 15, 20 minutes in a total dominance, really. If anything, the big concern everybody would have had on this side of the equation was that 10-7 at half-time was an incredibly miserable return for that dominance. That was the worry.
Yeah, if you remember, the 2018 team were really, really good just before half-time. They used to go up 4 levels, and they nearly always scored in first half injury time, and they really rammed their advantage home at that time. This Ireland team are incredible out the gap. They just come out of the blocks really quick. At the moment, they did it in both halves of both games. You know, to score that try, to show that level of control and cohesion from the off, to make the right decisions after facing the haka and all the things. I mean, it's a long build-up out in New Zealand. You come out to the pitch, you have to do 2 anthems, you have to face the haka, there's TV ads. There's a lot of time. You know, a lot of teams would want to feel their way into the game to play it safe, but Ireland didn't. They tore into it from the off. They went after New Zealand's line out. They applied pressure across every aspect of the pitch, and, you know, that they were again falling off a little bit before half time is a bit of a concern. That, you know, that the second quarter was again a bit problematic for them. Definitely worried me at half time, but even the shot of the Ireland dressing room at half time where Farrell is presenting to kind of an attentive group of players, it's a very calm situation. You know, not a lot of voices. You know, it looked like they were all taking in the information. Someone was then presenting from a big screen underneath where our camera was. It just, like, I know dressing rooms are no longer the kind of tub-thumping places they used to be, or so we're led to believe, but it just, you know, they exuded a calmness, and then they come out and they deliver, they execute so clearly in the first couple of minutes after half-time as well. When they were 14-14 as well, they didn't make hay when they were against 13. They actually, you know, they scored most of their points when they were, you know, equal numbers with the All Blacks, which was remarkable as well. So, it's a great thing to have, because they're good front runners. If they can get ahead, they're good at leading. They take good decisions. They're not as good when they fall behind, as we saw last week. So, you know, if they can play to that strength, and if they can start games that way, we saw what England did to Dublin in 2019 with that outrageous start that kind of almost emasculated Irish rugby for nearly 18 months afterwards. It's a pretty good thing to have in your locker when you can come out and start that well.
Yeah, Matt, talk to us about the Irish attack then, because lots seem to be working very well.
Again, I've got to give Andy Farrell and Mike Catt great credit. Freddie Igo, who was my analyst at Leinster in Scotland, was putting some things out during the week, and it was all about that Ireland attacked the New Zealand front row in the defensive line. They found a way to find them time and time and time again. You think the 2 sin bins, the red card and sin bin props, when they were mismatched against men with faster feet, when Ty Byrne went through. It was a prop that missed a tackle. It was time and time again, Ireland were running with that triangle of players. They have the ball carrier left and right and an outlet at one or two of the New Zealand props and putting them really under pressure. And you think of those little tap-on passes that Ireland were getting away with. Then you saw Ireland, and when Ireland are good, they get their second and third pass in. So let's think, when Ireland have been beaten this year, Paris and last week in Auckland, you hardly saw that second or third pass because the defence was coming up there. They weren't set fast enough in offence and they couldn't get that second and third pass in last week. And for those glimpses in Paris for 10 minutes, this week, and for those glimpses in Paris for 10, 15 minutes just after half-time, Ireland were getting that second and third pass in, Sexton out the back, and Sexton was getting to Ringrose and the boys out wide, or it was the forwards going forward, giving the little tip-on passes, and that's where Porter on that first try, you saw him charging onto that ball on a second pass. That's what they did. So why? Because they didn't allow the New Zealanders to get set like they did at Eden Park, and New Zealand were very slow off the line. Again, like Rory said, very poor from New Zealand, but that's because of the great pressure that Irish attack put on them. Joe, if I can take it back a little bit again, why I was excited last November about this offence that Cat and Farrell have put together, because this is the type of offence that can trouble the great teams of the world. Doesn't mean you're going to do it every week, but if you don't have an offence like that, you're never going to do it. And I think there's huge credit goes to the coaching staff for the way they've changed, the way they thought. You look at the ability of them to take their team that was walloped at Eden Park to winning in Dunedin. This is a coaching staff that really have their act together, and the players really believe in it. It's a really just circle of belief going through that group, and that this is so exciting for Irish rugby. So exciting that they get this win. This is really opening doors of possibility that I probably didn't think they could do. Certainly I didn't think they could do 12 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, it is somewhat surreal to be talking about a win on New Zealand soil and 4 wins and 7 against the All Blacks. I just didn't think we'd ever really be talking about an Irish team in that kind of space. Further to Matt's point then, Rory, a memory of November is us having discussions about how Sexton had numerous options, and this was why Ireland were now difficult to defend against, because they were that bit more unpredictable. Sexton had options, and who better than Sexton to pick the right options at times. I would say, with the exception of Wales at home in the Six Nations, and Wales were very poor that day, bit of a non-event. With the exception of that game, this is probably the closest to that November attack where Sexton seemed to just have option, as Matt says, coming short and at the back, and different pods here and different pods there. And Ron O'Gara's on the show yesterday. He said it's as good a Sexton performance as he's seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's high praise, and there's a fairly good back catalogue of performances to go on. As you list them out. But I thought their attacking performance was very good last week as well. I thought that was the one thing they delivered on. They caused New Zealand all sorts of problems. They look a smarter team than New Zealand right now. They're making good decisions all the time, and their skill execution was very good, apart from in the 22. I don't think we can give them a 10 out of 10 for their attack, because they got white line fever. I mean, their 22 return was pretty low over the weekend, and that's one area they can really improve on. It's one reason they should have some confidence going into next weekend that they can win the series, is because they are getting into that area frequently, and they're not getting the tries that they should be getting, that they're good enough to be getting. They're getting, Dan Sheehan's double movement, scrums going, the maul got, getting held up, the scrum penalty that went against them, lineouts that are going astray. These are all things they can tidy up. And James Lowe's knock on against 13 players, that was a really poor moment of execution from the team. Lowe's pass over, I'm listing out moments, these are all chances Ireland had to double down to get to win a record win in New Zealand. They probably should have had a record win in New Zealand. I'm talking that could have been New Zealand's heaviest defeat on Saturday if Ireland had taken the chances that were available to them. So while their shape is brilliant, and I love watching it, I think it's a really enjoyable style of rugby they're playing as well. You can really get on board with this team because they play with such, it's joyous, when it flows. It's just it's the options that Sexton has, the danger that they pose, the breaks that come off their clever movement, the hands the forwards are showing. It's an all court game, and I think the biggest tests they're going to have are going to be against the biggest, most physical teams like South Africa, England and France. But it gives them a chance against those teams, even though they don't have the horses for that course. They can pull those teams apart by playing this game. And to see it deliver, I suppose this is the beauty of a tour when he has them for a really long period of time and they've nowhere else to go. They're just training and living as rugby players. That, they don't go home at the end of the week. They don't go back to their provinces for a while. This is where they get to really make gains in terms of their, all sides of their game, but their attack in particular. So they should be getting better as this tour goes on, even if it is at the end of a long season.
Matt, what was your read on as Rory describes their poor enough return inside the 22, considering the pressure and, as we said, 10-7 half-time was a poor return. They were looking to go 17-0 up. All manner of mistakes and uncharacteristic moments. Anything jump out to you in that period?
Yeah, I thought they blew it. You get New Zealand with 13 men. Like that's a gift. Doesn't happen every day. And when they couldn't put points on during that period, and they really managed or mismanaged the red card and yellow card periods in that game, as bad as I've seen an Irish team do it, and then let New Zealand in the seconds after half-time, like it had already gone red for half-time, I thought, oh, here we go. They're going to blow this. They're going to blow this golden opportunity. But, again, to Rory's point, they scored all their points when they were even. It's like they didn't bother when they had this numerical advantage. But it was sloppy. The refereeing was tough. I thought Sheahan was hardly done by the double roll. I didn't think anyone was near him at the time, and he had a right to go forward. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. There were error after error after error. Great teams can find a way to come back, and they did find a way to come back and score some points. And whether it's a record score or not, I didn't care, because if I take it back, Joe, and I think I've said this to you a number of times as well, World Cup champions 91, Australia in 99, England in 2003, South Africa 2019. Every one of those teams that won a World Cup won a game in New Zealand or drew a game in the seasons leading up to that World Cup. Winning a game in New Zealand is so hard, but when you can do it, especially for Ireland have never done it, it just gives you such belief. And it also gives you a psychological advantage over New Zealand, knowing that you're going to take them on in the World Cup in 15 months' time. So as long as I didn't care how much they won by, I didn't care if it was half a point. As long as they won, that was a massive, massive win. That's bigger than Chicago and it's bigger than Dunedin. That's to me is the greatest single win in Irish rugby history. And they got a chance to back it up this week, but I don't really care about this week. The fact you do it once, that's all you need to have place that monkey on New Zealand's back the next time. It was extraordinary in every way that they stuffed up the advantage, but they still managed to win. I mean, that's going to do really terrible things to New Zealand heads. Isn't that great?
So you have that as the best win. Trumps a Grand Slam win, for instance.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Yeah. What kind of version, Matt, because Rory mentioned he's not all that impressed with New Zealand. What version of New Zealand are we getting here? Put this current effort across last November and now here we are in June. This current team, give or take, compare them to New Zealand teams that we've seen over the last 20 to 30 years. Where are they?
It's a really hard question to give you a definite answer or a really accurate answer. I think we do have to say, if we just stop being Irish rugby supporters here, there's no doubt Argentina and New Zealand last November were really fatigued from the COVID bubbles they've been living in. There's no doubt about that. But New Zealand do not have any excuses at home this June. Bubble's over. They've been playing at home, bit in Australia, but not much. They've had the best part of 7 months in New Zealand. Their performance at Eden Park last week was extremely good. It was an extremely good performance. Got to give them credit in every area. But then 7 days later, they were exceptionally poor, as bad as I've ever seen in New Zealand team, probably worse. I'm trying to think of a worse New Zealand performance. I can't really put my finger on one, but they were very inaccurate. So I think it's got a lot of to get that answer. It's not the greatest New Zealand team of all side. To give Foster his due, he's got players out, he's moving them around. I think there's still some other players that will find their way into this side, especially in the back line. But I think the performance for New Zealand this coming week is very, very important. They're not the greatest New Zealand team, but there's never a really bad New Zealand team, if you know what I mean. Like, they're still going to turn up and be a very good side.
Yeah. Foster used words like substandard, and he referred Rory to the number of errors as unacceptable, and he said for the newer players this was an eye-opener. So he was pretty scathing, or as scathing as any coach is going to be publicly. What's your